All right, I'm live. What's up? I'm here. How's it going? Happy New Year. It's 2020. It's pretty crazy. 10 years ago, what was I doing? I was graduating college and I had just landed a job at a national broadcaster here. I'm working on news as a video editor, and I would soon be in that job and begin to learn that I don't like to be just a cog in the machine, and that I wanted to be in front of the camera as well as behind the camera, reporting, writing, researching, all that stuff. And 10 years later, I eventually got to do all of it thanks to YouTube. So pretty cool to think back where you were 10 years ago and where you are now. Hopefully it's been progress and you haven't regressed, but we'll all hopefully we all in the end end up where we want to be. But thanks again for joining me. Big show today. Big show. Let me go over, preview a little bit what we're going to talk about today. Sanders raising a ton of friggin' money in 2019. The number I put in my video yesterday was from a New York Times estimate from what he raised in Q4. Sanders actually exceeded that number, so I'll get to my correction on that and actually detail how well Sanders really did in 2019. Also, a couple Michael Moore clips, surprisingly enough. One is a very old clip that I was just amazed by, so I want to share that. Also, another one is a newer clip, his appearance on Democracy Now! I want to share that. Also, talk about Australia and the sky there going orange, and you're going to see why. MSNBC pundit being wrong about Bernie Sanders and then claiming that he wasn't wrong about Bernie Sanders. If you follow me on Twitter and you've been keeping track, you already maybe know what this is about. But it's just this. I mean, and it's not even just this one pundit, as you're going to see, but this is how the press has been treating this entire story. All of a sudden acting like, oh, Bernie Sanders, I knew the whole time. Since the beginning, I said Bernie Sanders would be in the race this long. I mean, obviously. And then you go back and watch these people a year ago and see what they were saying, and it's just the complete opposite. Just, God, these people are so dishonest. It's incredible. What else? A couple of Bernie Sanders surrogates spitting fire on cable news. Going to share that. Andrew Yang lying in his new campaign ad about Medicare for all. I kind of covered this recently, but this is the full ad I hadn't seen, and it's a new ad, which changes my opinion sort of on this whole thing and the motivation behind it. And what else? I don't know. I think that's about it. I'll discuss my New Year's resolutions. Not that anybody cares, but it's my show, so I'll do what I want. And then, of course, take super chats and answer all your questions and comments and stuff. All right. Before I go any further, therationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Support the show. You help keep me going. I rely on Patreon to keep me going because you can't rely on YouTube ad revenue. It's up and down. It's hard to really know how consistent it'll be. So Patreon's always the best bet. Also, when you join, you get access to the Discord, which I'm going to be part of my New Year's resolution is to be more active on that Discord. So we have a Discord channel there. There's also a subreddit that somebody created. Let me see if I can pull this subreddit up. Because I had no idea that this was made until somebody shared it. And I wish I remembered your name, the person that made this. But it's pretty awesome. Of course, when I want to find it, it's now tough to find. Basically, it's I think it's just reddit.com/r/therationalnational. I think is what it is. There it is. So let me share this. There we go. Subreddit page. Again, I didn't make this. Some fan made this. But it's great. Join the subreddit, get involved, and all that fun stuff. They post the videos. You can comment underneath. Cool. What else before we get on to these stories? I'm going to now begin uploading this live stream, this weekly live stream, as a podcast. So I already have the podcast feed going. I was doing uploads. I tried to be consistent over the summer. As one person with a lot of work to do, I just was not consistent with it, because the idea of like uploading every single segment I do into like doing a separate audio version, uploading that audio version, tagging that audio, is just too much work. So what I'm doing now is the weekly podcast, or I should say the weekly stream, I'm making into a podcast. That'll be on the audio feeds. So if you just look up The Rational National on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, all that stuff, you'll find it. It's already up there. And yeah, so if you just want to hear the audio, and hopefully, like, some of the stuff I play, I don't know how well it translates to audio, especially when it comes to the way I present information. Oftentimes there's long pauses, especially in between segments where I'm prepping the next segment. So maybe I'll try to cut that audio out, but then I'm thinking about that's more extra work for me to do. So I can't guarantee the audio feed is going to be perfect. But if you are busy and it's hard to, people on their commutes, and they're in their car, they want to hear the audio, then there's the option there. All right. Let me just check on the chat here. Zach Finley sends a super chat saying, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Zach. Thank you so much for the super chat. So I'll take super chats throughout. Let me just prep that, because we all know that's a process. What else? Also, I just want to give, this is kind of random, but I want to give a shout out to Progressive Voice. He's been doing really good work. He's focusing a lot more now on news content, even though I got to say I really enjoy his TMZ stuff. But he's doing more news content now. I just watched one of his videos this morning breaking down how there was this big lie on CNN around their coverage of Bernie Sanders and his health. So he did a great video breaking that down. So go check out the Progressive Voice. If you don't know who the Progressive Voice is, let me pull up the YouTube page. All right, here we go. So let me get rid of this. Here's the page here. So this video was really good. CNN host lies about Bernie Sanders health report. Great video. Check it out. Progressive Voice. Sub to him. And he's growing, so I'm happy to see that. All right. Spoiler alert. That's the next story. I'll get there. All right. Let me just get the super chat page open, and then we will get going. See, these are the long pauses that I'm talking about. I'm not sure if this is really going to translate into audio, but people were asking for it, so they're going to get it. All right. First story is kind of a big one. Actually, I have to prep this now. I apologize to my audio fans listening right now. We will get to it. All right. So a big correction to a story that I put out this week about Bernie Sanders and his fundraising, in particular about his fourth quarter fundraising. So I did a story saying that Bernie Sanders has 5 million individual donors, or 5 million individual donations for the entire year, and totaling around $28.5 million in the fourth quarter, which is an incredible number. That was a number that was estimated by the New York Times, so that's the number that I reported. Turns out that's not true. The number is even bigger. So let me show you how much Bernie Sanders actually raised in the fourth quarter by sharing his tweet here. Bernie Sanders tweets out, I'm incredibly proud to announce we raised $34.5 million from 1.8 million contributions in the fourth quarter. Our average contribution, just $18. Together, we're proving you don't need to beg the wealthy and the powerful for campaign contributions in order to win elections. So this number is incredibly impressive. In fact, I believe, since the previous number was already a record, this has to be a record for any candidate ever in any campaign to raise this much money in a quarter, let alone the entire year. So we'll get to the I think we'll get to the totals of the entire year in a second here. But let me first show you how this number for Bernie Sanders stacks up to the other people in the race. As Ken Klippenstein tweets out here. So Sanders, 34.5 million. Buttigieg, 24.7 million. Biden, 22.7 million. Yang, 16.5 million. Gabbard, 3.4 million. So Warren's number isn't here yet. She was aiming for 20 million. So I'm not sure if she hit that, but we have to imagine she's somewhere between Joe Biden and Andrew Yang here. I got to say, Andrew Yang's number is pretty impressive for Andrew Yang. 16.5 million is pretty good. Joe Biden's also up from 15 million in the third quarter, so he did well in this quarter as well. Of course, understanding here, Joe Biden is not simply relying on individual donors, mostly small individual donors like Bernie Sanders is. Joe Biden is getting a lot of his money from private fundraisers, from bundlers, just like Pete Buttigieg, who at the same time, you can see here, Buttigieg, impressive number, 24.7. But again, bundlers, private fundraisers, Wine K fundraisers, that's where Buttigieg is getting a lot of that money from. These are candidates that are easily corrupted by the money that they are getting, because it's human nature. The people you surround yourself with, the people you meet with privately and have discussions with, you hear their worldview. So even if you don't want this kind of money to impact you, it will impact you. You saw how it impacted Barack Obama. In 2008, Barack Obama ran an incredibly progressive campaign, except for the fact that he was taking a ton of money, especially from Wall Street. Just so happens, Obama put into his cabinet almost every single person that Citigroup had suggested Obama put into his cabinet. Obama did, because they gave a ton of money to him, and it influenced him on policy. Clearly, I mean, just forget Wall Street for a second. Even though on Wall Street, nobody got prosecuted when it came to the financial collapse, but on healthcare, Obama fought for a private insurance-based system, a conservative healthcare system. Didn't even try to fight for the public option. So this is the kind of corrupting influence that money has, which is why what Bernie Sanders is doing is so incredibly important. And he's not even just doing it in in the middle of the road somewhere in terms of fundraising. No, he's at the top. So he has raised the most money by far out of anybody in this race, only relying on individual contributions, mostly small individual contributions. Let me go to the next piece of this here. So the profession of the average donor. So this is who is giving to Bernie Sanders in general. Teacher was the most common occupation of his Q4 donors, and the 5 most common employers were Amazon, Starbucks, Walmart, and the Postal Service and Target. So your average worker, that's who is donating to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, his campaign is a movement campaign of real people. That's what he's about. And let me play here. So I want to give a serious shout out here to Ryan Nobles. Through all of the misinformation, media misinformation, all the BS that is being put out, Ryan Nobles has actually had fairly solid analysis, and not even just analysis, but objective coverage of the Bernie Sanders campaign. So he's been on the ground covering the Bernie Sanders campaign, and instead of smearing him at every moment, he just objectively covers the campaign. So it's not like he talks up the campaign bigger than it actually is. No, he just covers what Bernie Sanders is doing objectively, what he's doing, who's behind him, who's supporting him. And it's amazing that I need to give credit here to someone for doing this, because this should be just what standard journalism is. But it's not what we come to what we've come to expect from cable news. So let me just show you this little piece here where he discusses how much money Bernie raised in total over all of 2019.
Take a look at this new financial snapshot, and it is a bright one for Senator Bernie Sanders. His campaign reporting that it raised $34.5 million in the last 3 months of 2019, including contributions from 40,000 new donors on New Year's Eve alone. That makes the best quarter to date for his campaign. It brings his total fundraising haul to $96 million. Take a look at this new...
All right, so it's kind of low there. Again, I'm thinking about when I'm uploading this to to a podcast that I got to edit this to make the audio there louder. But Ryan Noble's there saying Bernie has raised $96 million over the course of 2019. No other campaign has even come close. And again, this is money from individual, mostly small individual contributors. This is a grassroots movement. As Bernie says, it's not even just about him. This campaign is not about Bernie Sanders. It's about the movement behind him. It's about a mass movement of people that are going to be engaged in the political process. And once Bernie becomes president, that is just the beginning. When he becomes president, that movement will then be used to put pressure on politicians to support various pieces of agenda, like various agenda pieces like Medicare for all or free public college or his climate change initiatives, whatever it is. He will actually use that movement that he has built to put pressure on politicians to pass his agenda. So again, and this is an agenda for the people, not for Bernie Sanders. This is not a vanity project. This is about the people. For Bernie Sanders, the people always come first. All right. That's the Bernie Sanders story. Though to be fair, Bernie Sanders is going to come up a lot in every story, as he normally does, because you have to connect many stories to essentially the person or the movement that can help you achieve these various goals that we have. So let me get to something really interesting. Actually, first, let me take a super chat. I think I heard a super chat. Mufid Larby says, thank you for the great work, David. Thank you so much for your very generous donation. Thank you. Nick says, hey, did you see Yang wants Assange to stand trial? Yeah, actually, I saw Kyle Kalinske cover that. It's not, that's something I may cover at some point. It's not really my wheelhouse. But yeah. I mean, when it comes to the Yang supporters, I imagine that would bother them a lot. But then again, I don't really even understand Yang supporters all that much. It seems like a lot of them aren't really politically engaged. They apparently don't care about healthcare now that Yang doesn't support Medicare for all. So I don't know. I just think at this point, you have to understand when you're looking at the primary, if you don't hit 15% in a state, you're not going to get any delegates. So if your candidate cannot get 15% in Iowa, for example, then you're wasting your time. You should support a candidate that can actually win delegates. So if you are an anti-establishment kind of voter, you are tired of the status quo, then why don't you move from Yang to Bernie Sanders, someone who's going to fight for you, has a record of fighting for you, has this movement behind him. I just don't see the point of supporting Yang at this moment in time. It's just, he's pulling around like 4% nationally. And look, I know, polls are up and down, but he's not hitting the 15% mark, and especially not in early states. And if you can't get momentum in those early states, he's not going to be performing well deep into this election. All right. Let me go to Michael Moore. This clip is really, I like this clip a lot, as you're going to see. Hold up. New super chat I just saw pass. When you have rational national priorities. Progressive Voice, who I just gave a shout out to at the beginning of the stream, says, hey bro, could I get a shout out? Where were you 5 minutes ago? I literally just gave you a shout out. Also, what are your thoughts on the bone-in versus boneless wings debate? Are boneless wings wings? Okay, so first of all, I gave you a shout out. Rewind about 10 minutes, you'll see it. Bone-in versus boneless wings. So I gotta say, I've stopped eating chicken. I've stopped eating meat. I'm pescatarian now. So and I love chicken. So it's been kind of hard, but there's actually really good vegan substitute now for chicken, so it hasn't been too tough. But boneless wings are not wings. They're just not. Wings are wings. Boneless wings are just, aren't they just like chicken breast that are cut into small pieces and breaded? how is that a wing? So no, I think I agree with you on this. I'm not sure where you. I think Progressive Voice is on my side on this, but boneless wings are not wings. That said, boneless wings are still good. I mean, they're they're fried pieces of chicken that are delicious when they're dipped in sauce. But I wouldn't call them wings. So those are my thoughts. Andrea Morgan says, Black Burner from Tennessee. Big fan. Awesome, Andrea. Thank you for the super chat. And hashtag Bernie or Vest says, hashtag Bernie or Vest. Okay. Bernie or Vest. I'm not really sure what that means. It sounds like it's similar to Yellow Vest movement. But thank you for your super chat. Let's get to this Michael Moore clip. So I came across this clip of Michael Moore from 1996, and I really don't want to spoil anything. I just want to play the clip, and then I will discuss it.
Am I going to vote in the presidential election, and if so, for whom? I don't know what I'm going to do right now as I stand here tonight. I honestly don't know what to do. If anybody has any ideas, I mean, I'm truly open to them. On a moral level, I can't vote for Clinton. Obviously, can't vote for Dole. Perot. Bernie for president. Bernie for president! Oh, man. If that happens in my lifetime, shoot me after that moment, because it won't get any better than that when Bernie Sanders is in the White House. Just take me away after that moment.
I'm speechless. That was awesome. I mean, it's so crazy to go back in time and see Michael Moore talk about Bernie Sanders. And look, I knew he was a supporter of his. I mean, I learned that in covering politics, that Michael Moore backed Bernie, I think back in the 80s or back in the 90s in Bernie's first run for Congress. So Michael Moore has always been a Bernie supporter. But to see Michael Moore, there's a clip of him saying on stage that like he's imagining Bernie being president and saying, just shoot me if that happens. I think this, when I saw this clip, this is what I envisioned. I envisioned Michael Moore on Morning Joe the day after the 2020 election, and Morning Joe plays that clip, and they're just like, Michael Moore, are you going to shoot yourself? You called this. Look at this. So I feel like I feel like that's a clip that's going to come up again in the future. I just got a feeling about that. I also got to say, shout out to the Blue Jays cap. Look at that. Michael Moore wearing a Blue Jays cap back in the day. That's pretty awesome. I think, so this is at a Bernie, let me just show. So this is from Zed Jelani. He posted this on Twitter. He says, Michael Moore musing about Bernie Sanders becoming a president in 1996, but describing it as you would a fantasy. So I think this is at a Bernie Sanders campaign event, which is why Bernie Sanders' name came up. Because otherwise you'd be like, did people know about Bernie Sanders back in 1996? But yeah, people that, were in Vermont knew of Bernie Sanders, obviously. So yeah, just seeing that kind of warms my heart. And I got to say, I found this clip thanks to the Humanist Report. So shout out to the Humanist Report. He did a story on this. He has a great discussion on this. I think you should watch his feelings on this as well. It's just one of these things where I think we have to hope a little bit, right? You have to see clips like this. You have to daydream. You have to imagine what life might be like if what you want to happen actually happens. And us as a society, not just Americans, because I'm not American, but as a society, you need a world leader like a Bernie Sanders. You need somebody on the world stage of a superpower, a leader of a superpower like the U.S., to be leading a movement of people, a mass movement of people that is fighting for the everyday person. So this is why a Bernie Sanders presidency would be so important. It's not just about Americans. I know a lot of Americans may not realize this, but America has a lot of power in the world, and not just when it comes to war, but when it comes to everything. So you have an amazing leader, an incredible progressive leader like Bernie Sanders lead the U.S., the kind of change that can happen globally from that, it's indescribable. And I think a lot of it, we really can't even imagine the kind of change that is possible, because for so long we've just been like pushed down and told that we can't have nice things, that no, you can't live a life where healthcare is guaranteed to you. No, you can't live a life where housing's affordable, where college is affordable, where you can, afford to live. No, you can't have good wages. Like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. All of the wealth is going to the top, and not even just in America, like the entire world. All of the wealth that is being generated, all the new wealth being generated is going to the very top. That has to change, and it will change, because the people are not going to stand for it. We are talking about the masses, the 99% against the 1% on a global scale. That will change. All right. Let me get to some super chats and then Australia. Oh, hashtag Bernie Vest says a super chat saying, this is a follow-up saying, we are the yellow vesters who are going to be on the ground in Milwaukee. Bernie or Vest on Facebook. All right, check it out. Jeff sends a super chat, a very generous one, saying, Cenk just did a short live video talking about how it's now time to start talking about Bernie and Warren combining forces to overtake Biden. Thoughts? So here's the thing. It doesn't need to happen now, because let's wait and see what's going to happen in the early states. And I'll tell you why. There is a piece of Warren's base that are not Bernie supporters. So like, say Warren drops out now and backs Bernie. That doesn't mean all of her support is going to go to Bernie Sanders. So she kind of has this, she has a lot of Hillary supporters from 2016. She has kind of this, wealthy white liberal, some of those supporters, and some progressive supporters. The reason why this matters is because Warren could win some delegates that otherwise may go to Biden or Buttigieg. But she can win those delegates and then eventually give those to Bernie at the convention. So if she backs Bernie and she has and her delegates back Bernie, then you have a situation there where they can combine forces after Warren's been able to essentially take some delegates away that may have gone to Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg. So that's my feeling on this. I think it probably wouldn't hurt either if she dropped out soon and backed Bernie, but I think either strategy kind of works. So those are my thoughts on it. I think it's clear that Warren, now that we're seeing her, falling down in the money race, she's not going to be the nominee. So at this point, it is going to be Bernie or Biden. And Warren, I think, at some point has to back Bernie. It's just a matter of when that happens. But thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. All right, I'll get to more after. Let me get to prep this Australia story. I mean, if you haven't seen these images from Australia, get ready to see them, because it's crazy. Some crazy stuff. All right. So Australia is on fire. They're facing right now record high temperatures that are causing major fires and death and destruction. Let me first play for you this piece from Reuters that essentially goes over exactly what's happening in Australia. That's not it.
Orange skies that turn a bleeding red. It's a nightmarish scene across Australia as bushfires continue to burn on New Year's Eve. The blazes have destroyed more than 4 million hectares. Authorities fear that 3 people have been killed in New South Wales and another 4 were reported missing in Victoria. Fighting these fires has cost the lives of 9 firefighters so far. 3 were volunteers. And the youngest, who died on Monday, was just 28, described by New South Wales Fire Chief Shane Fitzsimmons as an extraordinary loss.
He leaves behind, tragically, a beautiful wife, Megan, who is pregnant with their first child that's due on the 4th of May. As you would expect, the family is grieving, and it's been a very difficult night, and I would be fair to say I don't even think the comprehension has set in yet.
The ferocity has never been seen on this scale before. A fire tornado overturned a firefighter's truck. Lightning strikes have also sparked blazes in the eastern states, which have been enduring a long drought with tinder-dry conditions.
They described it as an extraordinary wind event, describing it as a fire tornado, or a collapse. They even believe might have been a collapse of a pyroconvective column that had formed above the main fire front. That's resulted in cyclonic type winds that has moved across the fire ground and has literally lifted up a 10 or 12 tonne fire truck and flipped it onto its roof.
Survival has forced holiday goers to hide in the water or seek refuge in boats. And in Sydney, ahead of the New Year's Eve Harbour Bridge fireworks, smoke has cloaked the city. But authorities say despite public calls for them to be cancelled in solidarity with fire-hit areas, they'll go ahead as planned.
All right, so that kind of gives you an overview of what is happening. And look, I look at this video and I think, what is Australia going to look like in 10 years, in 20 years? Climate change has done a number on the world. And the people that are going to be most affected are the people that are already being affected right now. But it's going to hit all of us. I mean, if you think right now that you're safe, you're not. It's going to impact everybody, which is why it is so important to actually have a fundamental change in our system to deal with this immediately. UN climate scientists have given us 12 years to turn this entire thing around. 12 years, which means you need a completely different approach to energy than we have right now. A completely different approach to how we essentially live our day-to-day lives. Now, that said, look, the transition is not going to be easy. I mean, for some it'll be easier. It'll be easier than others, but there are candidates out there that actually have American candidates in this Democratic primary that have an approach that not just looks at this from an American perspective, but understands it will take a global movement to change things. Bernie Sanders, his Green New Deal is the most comprehensive deal in the race. I think it's $16 trillion. And that's because he actually takes care of the workers that are impacted from the move away from fossil fuels and into renewable energies. So if you say work on an oil rig, you're just your average blue collar worker. You are taken care of with full pay for 5 years, and you are given retraining, likely into another renewable energy field. So you can actually, you still work with your hands. You're still largely going to be doing similar kind of work, though obviously, cleaner. But there will be that transition period where we have to take care of the people that will be directly impacted by this move away from fossil fuels. But it has to happen. Otherwise, we have no planet. So let me just show you some more of these images here. I mean, this is crazy. So this tweet from Chowderhead says, if you haven't seen how bad it is down in Australia, let me explain. All these pictures were taken in the middle of the afternoon. The temperature was about 45 degrees Celsius. Winds caused by the fires have been blasting over emergency vehicles. 30% of all koalas are dead. It's horrifying. So in case you're just listening to this and you can't see the images, essentially every single image here, the sky and everything around them is red or orange. So there's a girl here in a boat. The entire sky is orange. She has her face covered by a mask, and you can tell that air is barely breathable. Man, moving on here. This looks like used to be a road. Everything is red. I mean, this could be an image from Mars if Mars had trees. Like, it's just completely insane. Here you see emergency crews driving near the fires. Again, the entire sky is red. And some leftover destruction. These places look like a ghost town. It's like Silent Hill over here. Just completely destroyed by these fires. So there needs to be a complete shift in how we deal with this issue. And let me share this tweet here. This is from Man in the Hoodie. The Amazon was on fire for all of 2019. Australia starts 2020 on fire. Notre Dame burned for 15 hours and people donated $1 billion in one day. Now, this tweet is on point, but understand here, we don't need random average people to donate the money to save the planet. This is what actually needs to be done, and nothing is more, or I can't make this point more clear than by sharing this tweet from a non-geared artist who tweets 2 Bloomberg stories. The one on the left here, $300 billion. That's the amount of money needed to stop the rise in greenhouse gases and buy up to 20 years of time to fix global warming, according to UN climate scientists. So $300 billion. That's all that's needed to delay this for 20 years to buy time to really turn this around. Another Bloomberg story. The world's 500 wealthiest people gained $1.2 trillion this year, speaking of 2019, boosting their collective net worth 25% to $5.9 trillion. The wealthy are the ones that need to pay for this. People that have all this wealth that don't need it. People that have, 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 yachts. These people exist. While there are people, not even to mention, homelessness and people that can't afford healthcare, but also as the planet is burning, these people are amassing all this wealth that they absolutely don't need and cannot even, there's no way you could even spend this money. So there is a clear approach to this issue, and it starts with taking this wealth that the wealthiest people in the world have accumulated, taking that wealth and using it to save the planet. All right. And I guess I should say that, that starts with a world leader that can actually push a movement to begin that process. And Bernie Sanders is obviously, I think, that leader. He's the only one taking this issue seriously in the Democratic primary. Okay. Let me get to some more super chats. Climate change stories just, they get me so down because it's like I have no power. Like, I really have no power over that. So it's hard for me to, discuss it because I'm not even sure what the outlet is for that, for our energy, I should say. Like for the energy I put into a story like that, like where do I tell people to go to help fix this? It has to be it's a public policy issue. So that's why it comes down to supporting a candidate like Bernie Sanders. Because as individuals, we don't have much power here. A lot more super chats. Okay, let me get to some of these here. Mark Keister says, big super chat. Thank you, Mark. Says, thanks for bringing this up before. The most important thing we can do to elect Bernie is to register as Dems in closed and semi-closed states like California. Mind raising this point on a weekly basis. Yeah, totally. So I mention this every week at this point. If you go to voteforbernie.org, FOR, voteforbernie.org, it takes you to a page where you click on your state, and it tells you when you click on your state when to register by, like the deadline, all that information. Maybe I might as well just bring it up. Let me share this here. Here you go. So again, voteforbernie.org, FOR. You select your state, and then say it's California. And then California primary on March 3rd, register by February 17th. So there you go. And you have to be, Californians must register as Democrat or undeclared to vote for Bernie. I suggest registering as a Democrat so there's no funny business, because you know what this is all they have left, right? Is to play with the electoral process. So register as a Democrat in whatever state you're in. Register as a Democrat. I know even if you hate it, you can't stand the fact that you have to do it. Do it if you want to friggin' win. Register as a Democrat and be ready to vote in your primary state. And then look, if you hate being a Democrat, then in 2021, unregister, change. But like for this year, just do this. Do this for the friggin' future of humanity, please. Register as a Democrat. Make sure you can vote in the primary or your caucus, and then get involved. And once again, thank you, Mark, for sharing that. He follows up by saying, along with voteforbernie.org. Yes. Thank you, Mark. Jaybird D says Yang is completely out of touch with human beings. I don't know why that made me laugh. Heart may be in the right place, but he's blinded by his quixotic ideas about how people will spend that dividend. And he's sullied by taking corporate money. Yeah, he also big donation. Thank you, Jaybird. I'll get to Yang and his healthcare lie that he continues to peddle out there, because initially I thought I'll talk about it in the piece, but I thought Yang had just changed his strategy on healthcare, and maybe his ads hadn't caught up yet because they were old ads. But no, he has a new ad that continues to pretend he supports Medicare for all when he does not. Sky Blue Brad says, Arkborn. My neighbor asked how to get a Bernie sign. I assume that's on the Bernie Sanders website. I don't know. BernieSanders.com. I'm sure it's somewhere there you can ask for a Bernie sign. Primate924 says, happy to hear you've gone pescatarian. Animal AG agriculture, I think is what you're saying. Animal agriculture is number 2 producer of GHG emissions and number 1 in deforestation worldwide. Yeah. Yep. That's another big reason to go vegan or vegetarian or pescatarian. Is factory farming. Huge impact on the environment. Jaybird D again says, you're absolutely amazing, David. Thank you for all you do. We know it's not easy to produce this terrific content. Bernie 2020. Thank you, Jaybird. Really appreciate it. Ronwin Demora says we need to wrest power away from the 1% or we'll die. Yep, I agree with you. And Rob R says, what makes you think Elizabeth Warren will do that with Bernie? You got inside info? Anyone who fantasizes that Elizabeth Warren will do this, you're nuts. If you prove otherwise, Elizabeth Warren is... Man. Short forms of words screw me up. If you prove otherwise, Elizabeth Warren is. Get real. Wait and see. Let's see what she does. Like I don't think it makes sense to jump to conclusions until we actually see what happens. All right, I'll get to the other ones afterwards. Let me do the next story. And this one is a doozy. This story is a doozy. I'm just prepping it now. All right. So another MSNBC pundit was wrong about Bernie Sanders and pretends that he wasn't. So I'm talking about Jason Johnson of The Root. Now, The Root is a website that I've actually enjoyed There's great articles on there. One article from Michael Harriot. He had a great piece on Pete Buttigieg being a total liar. Oftentimes, it can be a great website. At the same time, though, Jason Johnson is also a professor of political science and communications, which has me a little worried because of what he said here, as you're going to see, but also what he pretends his position has always been on Bernie Sanders, when, as I'm going to show you, it hasn't always been the same thing. So first, let's start with this clip. This was today, January 1st. This is Jason Johnson and his analysis of Bernie Sanders after seeing the amazing money that Bernie Sanders is bringing in.
But yeah, so here's the thing. The idea there was going to be a progressive battle between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it was never something that had much resonance with me, because that presumes that Bernie Sanders supporters are supporting him primarily for policy purposes, and that's not really what's going on. A lot of his core base support like him because they see him as sort of a political and democratic savior type character. So he was always going to end up winning out any sort of policy argument, because in the end of the day, people they like Bernie, and they're Bernie or bust kind of people. But I do think it's critical to remember this. We really are down to 4 people who have any chance. You've got Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Mayor Pete, and Elizabeth Warren. The question, but yeah, so.
All right. So before I go back in time to a year ago and show you what Jason Johnson said, let's just go over some of these points here. So he claims Bernie supporters don't support him because of policy. Really? Look. Some of these people on television they're just really dumb. They're in a bubble. They don't actually talk to Bernie supporters. They don't actually know why people support him, but they're in a bubble, and the bubble tells them, oh, people support him because they really like Bernie's personality or whatever the hell it is. It's because of his record, his track record, and his 40-year fight for the same things. It's because of policy. That's the policy. So the idea that they don't support him because of policy is absurd. And on top of that, calling him his supporters view him as a savior. Even if you want to believe that, the Bernie Sanders campaign is about a movement. It's about a movement of people. His slogan is not me, us. Unlike the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016, where it was I'm with her, the Bernie Sanders campaign is not me, us. It's about the movement. He says himself, Bernie says himself, he doesn't pretend it's, oh, if you elect me, I'm going to get everything done. No, he says, you elect me, we win this presidency, and then I will need you. I will need these supporters. I will need the people, the American people, to help push this agenda that is for the American people. He says it straight up that even if he wins, he will not be able to get any of this done unless the mass movement of people continue to be behind him and this push to have a new vision for America. So, everything about this analysis is just completely absurd. But then also, I just want to say, it's funny that he says here that Bernie supporters, they don't care about policy. Do Buttigieg supporters care about policy? Do Joe Biden supporters care about policy? It's funny how that criticism isn't levied at the candidates that their supporters actually don't care about policy. That these candidates, Buttigieg, Biden, it's actually just about their personality or who they are or their name recognition. Joe Biden has support because he's attached to Barack Obama. That's it. Name recognition. If you look at Biden's actual track record, it's horrible. He doesn't fight for people. He fights for Wall Street. He fights for massive corporations. Buttigieg, same thing. I mean, who believes Buttigieg on anything? This man has lied over and over again about what he supports. His healthcare plan is so backwards that he calls it Medicare for all who want it, when it's not Medicare for all at all. It is a public option, but he has to relabel it because he knows Medicare for all is so popular. So he pretends, oh, I support Medicare for all, but for those who want it, I'm not going to push my healthcare plan on you. When that's not how Medicare for all works. Medicare for all is a single payer system. The reason why Medicare for all would be so successful is because everybody's paying into the same system, meaning you have complete freedom of choice when it comes to doctors, providers, complete freedom. No co-pays, no deductibles, nothing out of pocket, no out of pocket expenses at all. I, as a Canadian, understand this because I live under a single payer system. So I can see right through Pete Buttigieg and his healthcare lies. But they're not judged about policy. or their supporters aren't questioning about why they support whatever candidate. But Bernie Sanders, oh, not about policy. It's because they see him as a savior. Just complete BS. But let's now compare what Johnson said in this clip, him claiming, oh, I never thought, this whole time I knew Bernie Sanders, he was always going to win this fight with Elizabeth Warren. I knew from the beginning. Let me show you what Jason Johnson said a year ago. So first, I'm going to play a piece of the clip that I just showed you, and then I'm going to show you what he said a year ago on January 10th, 2019. So first up, you'll hear this clip I just played.
The idea there was going to be a progressive battle between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it was never something that had much resonance with me, because that presumes that Bernie Sanders supporters are supporting him primarily for policy purposes, and that's not really what's going on. A lot of his core base support like him because they see him as sort of a political and democratic savior type character. So he was always going to end up winning out any sort of policy argument, because in the end of the day, people they like Bernie, and they're Bernie or bust kind of people.
All right, that was this year. 2020. Now let's play 2019, what the same man was saying a year ago.
Sanders, this seems to, if you were to create the worst possible 3-week period for his presidential campaign, it would be the launch of the person you share the most ideological space with, Elizabeth Warren, and the fact you've had to defend yourself against the perception that your supporters are very anti-woman.
He's done. And I was
really?
Yeah,
you think he's done?
I think
wow.
He's done. I was literally having this discussion with a good contact of mine who's on the campaign. I was like, I see Bernie Sanders launching his campaign, and by August realizing he won't be in the top 5 in Iowa and dropping out. I don't think he'll get that far.
All right. Did you catch that? Here's what he said at the beginning. Here's what he said this year, 2020.
The idea there was going to be a progressive battle between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it was never something that had much resonance with me.
Never something that had much resonance with me. The idea that there was going to be a battle between Bernie and Warren, are you kidding me? It was obviously obvious Bernie Sanders was always going to win that battle. Between Bernie and Warren, I always knew, me as the smart guy on MSNBC, I always knew that Bernie Sanders would beat out Elizabeth Warren. And then, what's that? Warren's gone, or Bernie's gone by August?
The law shared Warren had to defend the perception of anti-woman.
He's done. And I was
really?
Yeah,
you think he's done?
I think
wow.
He's done. I was literally having this discussion with a good contact of mine who's on the campaign. I was like, I see Bernie Sanders launching his campaign, and by August realizing he won't be in the top 5 in Iowa and dropping out.
These people, man. The dishonesty is just incredible. Look, I was wrong about Joe Biden. I thought Joe Biden wouldn't be first in this race still in January of 2020. I did not think Joe Biden would still be at the top of national polling in this race. I was wrong. I've talked about this multiple times. I talk about this all the time, how I'm shocked that Joe Biden's still at the top. Because I'm an honest person. I'm going to tell you when I'm wrong. People on television, no. A year ago, Bernie Sanders, he has zero chance, out by August. Bernie Sanders is going to be out by August. A year later, I always knew. I mean, some people didn't think so, but I always knew. I'm the smart guy. I always knew Bernie Sanders would be in this race for a long time. They're incredible. Like, it's important as well to bring these clips up, because if Bernie Sanders wins, these people are going to be out there saying, well, obviously, I mean, he had a big movement. He had the most volunteers. He had the most donations, the most donors, the most grassroots support. It was obvious to me the whole time that Bernie was going to win. When the whole time they've been trying to push a narrative that he can't win, that he won't win, that he'll be out by August. And they do this to manufacture consent. They do this to create this narrative to influence people, unsuspecting people, largely, people over 45 that watch cable news mostly. Again, I know a lot of my audience and a lot of Bernie supporters do support Bernie Sanders that are over 40, if you're over 45. But the cable news audience in general is over 45, watches cable news, watches MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, and are misinformed by this crap. And they take on this worldview. I mean, you saw it when I covered, actually, I'm not sure I showed this, but there was a recent focus group of the recent debate in December. the Democratic debate. And a couple people there, they thought Bernie Sanders won the debate. They didn't come in as Bernie supporters, but they thought Bernie Sanders won the debate. But they said, oh, but Bernie can't win. I mean, it has to be Joe Biden because only Joe Biden can defeat Donald Trump. Why would they think that after seeing Hillary Clinton lose in 2016 using the exact same strategy of reaching out to conservative voters? That's the Joe Biden strategy right now. He's trying to reach out to conservative voters. Joe Biden just said he would choose. He'd be open to choosing a Republican vice president. That's the Hillary Clinton strategy of reaching out to conservatives. Why would these voters think that Joe Biden is the most electable against Donald Trump when every piece of evidence shows otherwise? Because cable news tells them that. Because they see on television that Bernie can't win. Even though it's the complete opposite situation. I mean, Bernie's support is independents, is non-voters, is young people. These are the people that did not come out for Hillary Clinton in 2016. This is why she lost the election. Hillary Clinton did not lose in 2016 because she didn't appeal enough to conservatives. No, it's because she suppressed the vote. She suppressed the Democratic base. Young people, typical non-voters, independents did not come out to vote for Hillary Clinton. In 2020, Democratic voters in general will come out for the same voters that came out in 2016 to vote against Trump and vote for Hillary in 2016 are still going to come out for Bernie Sanders in 2020. They're not going to stay home because these are diehard Democratic voters. They're going to come out and vote Democrat regardless. So the people you need to get are the people that didn't come out in 2016. Young people, independents, typical non-voters. That's Bernie Sanders. That's his base. So, but this point is not made on cable news because you have dipshits like this misinforming people and acting like they know best. I mean, again, this guy, he is a professor of political science and communications. He is shaping young minds with this bullshit. And they claim, oh, why are you being so mean to me? I mean, so I had a couple interactions with this guy on Twitter. It started off kind because I was, honestly, when I first shared this clip on Twitter, I thought he was just misinformed. I didn't think he was a dishonest actor. I thought, hey, I mean, maybe he just thinks that Bernie supporters don't care about policy, but some people, they're in their bubble, they don't know better. So let me just try and discuss why I know Bernie has so much support. But then I saw some tweets from him calling people Bernie bros, and it became pretty clear about what this guy's about. And you see old clips like this one saying that Bernie's out by August based on no information, just his own personal feelings. Like, when I give you predictions, when I say things, I base it in some sort of information. The reason I thought Joe Biden wouldn't be in first by this time is because I thought it would be obvious from the debates that he didn't know what he was talking about. I miscalculated how important the debates would be. People, apparently, many don't watch the debates, so it didn't have that much of an impact that Joe Biden wasn't able to form sentences. But this guy, he'll pretend that he was always, he always saw it coming. Yeah, Bernie Sanders, I knew. I mean, some people didn't know, but I knew. Just so freaking dishonest. All right. That's enough of that. I could go off on cable news all day. There's going to be a time, though, at some point in the future, I don't know if it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they're going to lose their power. MSNBC and CNN are not going to have as much power as people on YouTube do. So at some point, that's going to happen. I mean, you're seeing it now with young people. Young people overwhelmingly support Bernie Sanders because they actually get their information from legitimate sources. They can go back in time. They can see clips from the 80s, from the 90s, and see Bernie fighting for the same thing. They know this is a man that has always fought for people, even when no one was paying attention. I mean, that's how you know somebody is genuine. When they're fighting for you, when no one's even paying attention to them. Back in the 80s, 90s, nobody was listening to Bernie Sanders. No one knew who he was unless you lived in Vermont. And he was fighting for people. He was fighting for these same issues back then. And he's still doing that today. And finally, he's being recognized for it. I mean, think about the amount of work the amount of work that Bernie Sanders has put in. The amount of work Bernie Sanders has put in over the course of his career. And just now, 40 years later, it's paying off. Paying off in the sense that people are actually recognizing and waking up to how rigged this political system is. like, Bernie Sanders deserves your vote because he's fought for you the entire time. Now it's time for you to fight for him. All right. Speaking of that, let's go to some solid Bernie fighters. Actually, let me hit this. Let me hit these super chats first. Man, we're nearing 2,000 viewers right now. That is solid. The chat's going crazy. I really need to get mods. I cannot control the chat. It's nuts. It's going way too fast. But let me get to some. Let me get to some super chats. I'm not even sure where I left off. Okay, I think I know. All right. Excuse me. I burped too much. Cyrus, 1976, says, end insane wealth. Nobody needs over 20 million and live like kings. 100%. I'm not even sure what I would do with $1 million, let alone $20 million, let alone billions. Like, just, it's ridiculous. The Progressive Voice asks me, do you like Tulsi Gabbard? No. I've talked enough about Tulsi. Yeah, I don't want to get into that. I think it's obvious now that she's not who she pretended to be for a while. So those are my thoughts. Ryan Sipe says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Ryan. Sky Blue Brad says, I meant Arkansas support, Dave. Arkansas support? Oh, when you said Ark-born. Then type out Arkansas. I don't know what that means. Okay. Sky Blue was born in Arkansas, in case you didn't know. There you go, Brad. Lulu H sends $5 saying, keep it up. Thank you. And it's a little workout gif. You trying to say I should work out more? Because you'd be correct. I should work out more. But thank you, Lulu. Peace is possible. That's the account that says coral reefs have died off 80% in just 50 years due to a 2-degree rise in ocean temperatures. We must act now. Completely agree. Also, thank you for your generous super chat. Kim Stribling with a generous super chat. No message. Thank you, Kim. Mark Keister is back saying, I would even go as far as adding my suggestion to the end of any individual Bernie-related clip. I have done that a lot. So the voteforbernie.org website, again, if you missed that earlier, voteforbernie.org, FOR, go there. It tells you when your primary state votes or caucuses and when to register by, all that stuff. Make sure you are ready for it. Mark Worth says, or sends me a little gif here of a coffee cup. Thank you, Mark, for your super chat. Zachary Fluke says, if nothing changes for multimillionaires and billionaires, nothing fundamentally changes for you. And that's quoting Nina Turner, the amazing Nina Turner. Thank you, Zachary. Polyfufu says, how likely do you think it is that Trump will avoid debating the Democratic nominee? If Bernie wins, I'm sure Trump will avoid debating him. Thank you. So this discussion was happening. I'm not sure if you guys remember this. Back in 2016, they were saying the same thing, that Trump wouldn't even be in the debates. I don't buy it because he did end up debating Hillary Clinton. I think he would debate or try to debate Bernie Sanders. It wouldn't go, or it won't go too well. But I don't think it would help him if he avoided it. It would just make him look like, like a wuss. So, I mean, it would be really easy to call Donald Trump a wuss for avoiding a debate with Bernie Sanders. And yeah, honestly, either way, whether he debates him or not, I don't think it's going to have much of an effect. I think Bernie will destroy Donald Trump. Absolutely destroy him. Because Bernie Sanders is going to bring out a ton of typical non-voters. And that's going to be the difference. All right. I think there's more, but let me move on. I'll get back to the super chats after. Yes, these stories. So, I'm about to share a couple of Bernie surrogates spitting fire, as you're going to see. A couple of Bernie Sanders surrogates were on cable news spitting fire in support of Bernie Sanders. So this is going to be Philip Agnew and Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. Let me first go to Philip here. I think it's Agnew and maybe Agnew. I'm not positive, so don't quote me on the pronunciation. But let me show you here. This is was posted by Jeremy Dexter. This is him on, this is Agnew on MSNBC discussing Bernie Sanders.
And we have to talk about what this election is truly about. You're not going to be able to endorse your way or identify your way into the votes of women, of black people, of trans people in this country. You've got to earn their votes.
That's right.
And that's why this campaign is surging. It is not because people are looking at candidates and saying, I just want to choose a man, I want to choose a woman. But black people weren't supporting black candidates. And it's because what they were bringing to the table was not speaking to the real needs of working people. And so people are looking at the candidates and saying, I don't really care what you look like, but what are you saying? What are you bringing to the table? And also, what have you been talking about? The last 20 or 30 years, we have candidates who have switched parties. We have candidates who have chosen positions and backed away from it. And the voters are responding viscerally because we know we've heard promises of hope and change, and we need a candidate and a campaign. And that's what's represented in the Sanders campaign. We are taking the political conversation to everyday people. Last week, we had $1 million raised in one day in small dollar donations. I think at some point, we've got to trust the people and what they are saying. And they're saying they want a campaign and a movement to the White House that stands for them. And I think people on the right are looking for that. And that's what we've seen, and that is what has been animated by the Sanders campaign. And yeah, some of the other people are plummeting, but it's not solely because of who they are.
So there you go. Everything he says there, exactly right. And look, these are all fantastic points, but I feel like this is stuff that really should be just obvious to cable news, like the hosts on here. Like, this should be discussed often because it is so obvious that people aren't supporting Bernie Sanders because of identity, or, I mean, most voters care about policy issues. Most voters want a candidate, want a president that will have a material benefit to their lives. So Bernie Sanders is fighting for issues that he's fought for 40 years. That's why he has a ton of support, because people know they can actually trust him on these issues. People have been lied to again and again by politicians. And in Bernie Sanders, they see somebody that they can actually trust, because, again, this is a man who's been fighting for them forever, and he was fighting for them when nobody was paying attention, which shows you that he actually cares about the issues. Bernie never did this for the spotlight. He's doing this because he doesn't see anybody else that can amass this kind of movement and create this kind of change for the country. Let me now show you Abdul El-Sayed. He ran for governor in Michigan, and he is a Bernie Sanders supporter. So let me show you this interaction here.
If you look at the head-to-heads over time, Sanders and Biden, they both beat Trump. And I also say it is noteworthy that Trump has been closing the gap since October. Do you really think Biden can't beat the president?
Look, I think any Democrat right now has a great shot at beating this president who has shown himself to be a fraud, a phony, and a liar. But the question right now is, do we want to go back to the ledge that we fell down in 2016, or do we want to rethink why it is that we lost that election so poorly? Hillary Clinton was, in theory, the most electable Democrat ever to run for office. And people are making the same argument about Joe Biden. That didn't work out so well for us. And then the other point I'll just make is that polls don't lead, people do. And one of the things about Bernie Sanders that is so crisp and so important right now is that he's polling well among the electorate that he's emerging. The people who stayed home for Hillary Clinton last time, who are looking like they could potentially stay home for Joe Biden this time, we need to pull those people out to the polls. And those aren't the people that get polled in the polls that we're citing. And so it's really important to be focusing on the fundamentals. Issues like Medicare for All, Green New Deal, those are the issues that are going to pull out those young people from across this country, delivering us the kind of win that we know we deserve and the mandate to govern that gives us the after Trump that we want so badly.
Here's the thing. We heard Sanders there in that intro saying, I'm not going to name them, you know who they are. He also did call out Biden by name when he sat down with the LA Times editorial board. Let me read what you said. What he said. Yeah. He said, my God, if you're Donald Trump and you got Biden having voted for the war in Iraq, Biden having voted for these terrible, in my view, trade agreements, Biden having voted for the bankruptcy bill, Trump will eat his lunch. So this is clearly a strategy, but how effectively, I guess, do you think Sanders can cut into Biden's electability argument?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's his strongest argument. I think his argument about.
So I want to pause this here for a second because I want to go back to this argument. This is a great quote from Bernie Sanders. Let me just quote it again. So this is Bernie Sanders saying, my God, if you're a Donald Trump and you got Biden having voted for the war in Iraq, Biden having voted for these terrible, in my view, trade agreements, Biden having voted for the bankruptcy bill, Trump will eat his lunch. Exactly. Now, look at this argument. It's indistinguishable from an argument against Hillary Clinton. So, Donald Trump is the president. Hillary Clinton lost. And this argument was a part of that. Now, it's not that Democrats went from Hillary to Trump because Trump made this argument. No. Democrats stayed home. Young people stayed home. The base stayed home. Typical non-voters stayed home. These are the people that you need in order to defeat Trump. So you have Donald Trump here in the position to be able to make the exact same arguments that he could make against Hillary Clinton back in 2016 and again suppress the vote. This is why the idea that Biden is the most electable candidate is so completely absurd. They were saying that about Hillary Clinton back in 2016 and look how that happened. So and again, these are points that should be obvious, but even when brought up here, they can't admit it, even though it is so friggin' obvious that Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden are two sides of the same coin. They can't bring themselves to acknowledge this very fact. Let me continue this clip.
The bankruptcy bill. Trump, how effectively, I guess, do you think Sanders can cut into Biden's electability argument?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's his strongest argument. I think his argument about the Green New Deal or emerging. I think those are all reasonable arguments. I think people in the Democratic Party take on Biden at their own peril. We've seen a number of the candidates take him on directly. Some of them are not in the race anymore. Yeah. Some of them have dropped back.
One of our friends has called it the Biden boomerang.
Yeah, I think in this race, Biden is the most dependable candidate as far as support, and it is the broadest base support. I look at Sanders as the most passionate support, but I think it's more limited than what Biden has. But this is why we have the primary. I'm not going to this idea that sort of has been going around in the last 24, 48 hours that Sanders had a resurgence is kind of silly. He never left. He was always, and he's been in a solid second place or at times first place in some of the important states.
The only good point made so far by this man.
One of the top two candidates, and that's an enviable position to be in this close to the Iowa caucuses.
Abdul?
So, Joe, I'll agree with you that he is never left. But we are seeing a steady momentum that really is about the kind of ground game that he's been able to build, both in 2016 and emerging into 2020. But here's where I'm going to disagree with you. The argument that Joe Biden is somehow dependable, I don't agree. And when we're talking about the kind of voters that Democrats have missed out on for so long, what's dependable is having held the same position for 40 years, standing alone when it was unpopular, only to find yourself surrounded by millions of people who now agree with you on issues like Medicare for All, issues like the Iraq War, issues like Afghanistan, issues on regulation of banks. And so when you talk about dependable, there's one way to say, well, he's been around for a while. Both of them have. But one of them has stood solid on the issues that he believes in, and the other has been, quite honestly, a bit flaky, and where he has stood solid, it's on issues like mass incarceration, which now he's starting to double back on, realizing that some of his policies have created this epidemic that we're now dealing with today. By the way, that's affecting the kind of voters that Democrats have been missing for the past 2 elections. We've got to stand right now on something. Donald Trump is going to be the Republican that we're up against. We know where he stands. We need a Democrat who stood up for his values his entire career.
I'm in the uncomfortable position of trying to be an analyst because I don't have a candidate, and I appreciate strong advocacy like we just had. I'm not going to say anything bad about Bernie Sanders.
This idea that this man doesn't have a candidate, total lie. If you have a job in politics, you have an opinion. You have a candidate that you support. This idea that journalists can pretend that they don't support a certain candidate is completely absurd. Now, occasionally you'll be able to have someone who's like an objective reporter and is not about giving their opinion and doesn't need to give their opinion ever. But this guy was just giving his opinion about how Joe Biden has broad-based support, he's the best to go up against Donald Trump. So if you're going to give your opinion, clearly you have thoughts on who you support. So this is the approach that cable news takes, that they think they're objective because they don't tell you who they support secretly. I tell you who I support. So I'm actually honest about that. Cable news, they support certain candidates, but they don't tell you. I mean, imagine I did all these videos, like the same videos that I'm doing, but I didn't say I support Bernie Sanders. Like, it would be obvious that I do, just like it's obvious that people in cable news, they support Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, these more moderate candidates. It's obvious they support those candidates. They just won't admit to it. I mean, at least admit to it. So, like, I just don't, this continued lie of cable news pretending they're objective because they don't tell you who they support. There's nothing to it. People like us online, progressive outlets, independent outlets, YouTube shows, we're honest about who we support, but at the same time, we also give you the objective facts. Just like, I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh, Bernie Sanders is in first nationally. No, Joe Biden's in first nationally, and I'm surprised by that. I was wrong about that. I thought he wouldn't be, but he is, like, at this point. I thought Joe Biden would have fell off by now, but he hasn't. So I'm going to give you those objective facts, but at the same time, I'm going to tell you why I think Bernie Sanders is the best to defeat Donald Trump. And Abdul El-Sayed gave, the perfect reasoning there, the reason that I make all the time on this show. The idea that Bernie Sanders, his base is young people, is independents, is a typical non-voter. The people that Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, and that's why she lost against Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders can bring those people out in 2020 against Donald Trump. And in addition to that, he'll still bring out the same voters, the same Democratic steady voters that voted for Clinton in 2016. So he's not going to lose those people. But on top of that, he'll also bring all the people that don't normally vote. This should be an obvious point, but it's not a point that is consistently made on television, which is why it becomes a news story for me when I actually see somebody allowed on cable news to make that point. So shout out here to both Abdul El-Sayed and Philip Agnew or Agnew, making great points here about why Bernie Sanders is the most electable and really the best person to not even just go up against Donald Trump, but the best person to actually be able to transform the entire country with a mass movement of people that are fighting for the average person. All right. Next. What is next? Let me take some more of these super chats. Jay Bird D is back saying climate change. Love how rich people act like they can't pitch in whilst gobbling down burgers coated in gold foil. Bing bong grotesquerie. Look, I half agree with you because of course, the average person can pitch in. Like, as I was saying earlier, like a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet is a lot more healthier for the planet. At the same time, it's not going to be enough. That's not enough. Like, you need actual policy change, national or not nationally, but globally, to really completely turn this whole thing around. So yes, these little steps, like I'm not discouraging anybody from taking those steps, taking those personal steps to better the environment. But understand at the same time, you need actual change at the federal level and globally to really move around the situation we have on climate change. Rennie sends a generous super chat saying, I wish everyone a very Bernie New Year. Happy Bernie New Year to you as well, Rennie. Caroline Camp says, hi, David. Happy New Year from Rotterdam, the Netherlands. Could you say hi to Jos? It's his B-Day in about 2 hours. Thanks and keep up the good work. Happy birthday, Jos. I think I'm saying your name right. Happy birthday. Jesse Newman sends a $10 super chat in saying, see the clip that emerged yesterday of Biden saying U.S. culture is European, not African imported thoughts. It was a clip taken out of context. So in case you don't know what Jesse's talking about, there's a clip Joe Biden's at a recent event, campaign event, saying basically saying what was just said, that Joe Biden was saying that U.S. culture is European. It's not from Asian countries, not from Africa. That was taken out of context because I believe he was actually talking about what the alt-right essentially is arguing for, what the Trump supporters are arguing for. So, and if you look at that account, go look at the account that posted that clip originally. Read through their tweets. They're not an honest actor. You will begin to see some tweets where you're like, whoa, because I know I said that when I was looking through that person's tweets. Anytime you see a clip that you think, is this for real? Look at the account that posted it and look at the other tweets, because oftentimes you'll discover that, oh, this person is actually incredibly dishonest and they're pulling this clip out of context. And look, I'm not someone to defend Joe Biden ever. But again, just like I was saying earlier, how cable news is different from what we're doing on YouTube, I'm not going to lie and say, oh, look what Joe Biden said. Oh, my God, that's terrible. When I know full well that he was taken out of context in that clip. Even though I don't support Joe Biden, I'm not going to lie about him. But I'm glad you brought that up, though, Jesse. Thank you for bringing that up. Tom Bosch sends a $10 super chat saying, please remind everyone that there are no winner-take-all states in the Dem primary. Every vote matters, even if he's going to lose the state you live in. Register now. Thank you. That's true. Unlike the GOP, the Democratic primary is not winner-take-all. So even if Bernie comes in like second or third in like South Carolina, those are still delegates. That still matters. So absolutely, make sure you're registered and you vote in the primary or get involved in the caucus. DB says, what light setup and mic and software, etc. do you use? Good technical question. I have 2 box lights in this room. I used to use 3, but the walls I have in this room are all white. So surprisingly enough, I could just use 2 and it lights up the entire room. I don't know how to explain. I'm not even sure what brand they are. But if you go on like, what's a good website? B&H Photography. I think that's a website. They sell the lights that I bought. Just look up box lights. I think you'll find them. It's like a 3 box light set. And then mic. So this is the Shure SM7B. Fantastic mic. This mic's used by a lot of shows. Joe Rogan uses this. Majority Report uses this. Progressive Voice uses this mic. So yeah, it's a fantastic mic. And software, I use Final Cut to edit. Excuse me. I use Final Cut to edit my videos, and I use Wirecast for live streaming. So there you go. If you want to start your own show, you got everything you need now. DB also says, FYI, people abbreviate because of 50 character limit. Yeah, that's so stupid. Actually, if I can contact YouTube over that stuff, like, or anybody contact YouTube over that, like send them messages. It's really dumb that the character limit and super chats are limited to 50 characters. I don't know why that's the case. Anna Bird retired sends a generous super chat. Thank you, Anna. Saying Joe Biden is every bit as electable, trustworthy, and inspiring for people to get out and vote as Hillary Clinton was. Let that sink in. Absolutely. Oh my. Joe Biden's a worse candidate than Hillary Clinton is. Straight up. I would not want to see him up against Donald Trump. I would not have a good feeling about that, seeing how it went with Hillary Clinton. you will, like, at the very least, you suppress the youth vote 100%. I mean, the youth are completely with Bernie Sanders. If you want new people to come out and vote that didn't vote last time, you have to support a candidate that actually excites young people out to vote. Not to mention, again, independents and typical non-voters. I mean, you have the potential here to have a lifelong independent on the ballot as a Democratic nominee. That brings out a ton of people that that have been disillusioned by this two-party system. You put a lifelong independent on the ballot, and the Sanders campaign hopefully makes the case, saying this, that, hey, this is a guy who's called out the GOP establishment, the Democratic establishment, the media establishment, the corporate establishment. This is a guy who's not aligned to any group. He is going to fight for people. That's who he's aligned to. You make that case to the American people, you bring out a ton of non-voters. All right. Do I have more stories? I'm sure I do. I have many more. No. About two or three stories. All right. Next story is Andrew Yang. There's a little tease. Just prepping this one. Again, I feel bad for the people listening on podcast, because if I keep all these breaks in, you're going to wonder if the podcast ended. But nope, still here. Just give me a second. So 2020 candidate Andrew Yang has a new campaign ad out. Now, before I even say anything else, I want to play this ad for you and then tell you what's wrong with it.
The work of so many caregivers goes unseen. Whether it's caring for parents or, like me, staying at home with young boys, one of whom has special needs. If my husband, Andrew Yang, is president, he'll fight for Medicare for all with mental health coverage and for $1,000 a month for every American, including caregivers, because Andrew values what we do, not just for our families, but for our nation.
I'm Andrew Yang, and I approve this message.
So, great ad, right? Little problem. Andrew Yang does not support Medicare for all. He continues to claim that he does, and he doesn't. And this is a new ad. So I initially did a story on this last week now, I think, discussing that Andrew Yang doesn't support Medicare for all, but he had some old ads that were saying that he supports Medicare for all. Well, so like my assumption was that, Andrew Yang changed strategy. I mean, it's a horrible idea to change strategy away from Medicare for all, as we've seen with Kamala Harris. When she backed off Medicare for all, she lost all her support. Elizabeth Warren released her ridiculous two-piece plan to somehow get Medicare for all, but not really, because it's more of a public option at first. So she lost support after doing that. Andrew Yang backing off Medicare for all. But no, this is a new ad. And he is knowingly doing this, while he's pretending to still support Medicare for all while he doesn't. So here he is recently on ABC This Week being questioned on this.
Let's turn to your healthcare plan, because you've just released a new healthcare plan, and I'm a little bit confused about where you stand. First, I want to play clips from two of your ads where you talk about healthcare.
We need to move towards a Medicare for all system where every American has access to quality and affordable services.
His ideas are a blueprint for a new way forward. A healthcare system with Medicare for all.
But I've looked at your healthcare plan. In fact, I've got it right here. And this plan does not call for Medicare for all. In fact, it doesn't even have a public option. So why the dissonance here?
We need to move towards universal health care that's high quality and nearly cost-free for Americans around the country. But reality is we have millions of Americans who are on private insurance right now, and taking those plans away from them very quickly would be untenable for many, many Americans.
Why? Why is that untenable? So apart from the obvious fact that Andrew Yang is lying in his campaign ads and is not admitting to it here, why is it unattainable to replace your private insurance with a single payer system? There's nothing wrong with that. People would have more comprehensive coverage under Medicare for All and zero out-of-pocket expenses, no copays, nothing. What's unattainable about this? Like this, there is no coherent argument against a Medicare for All single-payer system. I'm a Canadian. I live under a single-payer healthcare system. There is no argument against it. There is no argument moving from. I mean, this is why there is no conservative. We have a conservative party in Canada, obviously, but the idea that they would ever run on getting rid of our single-payer system is just so completely absurd. They would never dare do that, and they haven't done that because they would be completely wiped out of Parliament. Our single-payer system is incredibly popular. The only issues with it is that there isn't enough put into it. So we should also have dental care universally guaranteed to us, and we don't. Pharmacare should be universally guaranteed to us, and it's not. But the issue with it isn't that we don't have enough private insurance in our system. That's absurd. So this idea that, 45,000 people a year died due to a lack of access to healthcare, but that's perfectly fine because it's unattainable to, it doesn't make any sense to move to healthcare, to a Medicare for All system right now. Too disruptive. It would change too many things for people. Maybe it would save lives. Maybe people that can't afford healthcare right now would actually be able to get healthcare and preventative care on top of that, preventing them from having more serious issues in the future and being and putting even more pressure on the system when it comes to cancer treatment, for example. So if you catch things early, it's a lot cheaper on the system than the current system is right now. There is no argument against a Medicare for All system. The vast majority of people would be paying a lot less through their taxes under a Medicare for All single-payer system than they currently pay to a private employer. And not even to mention, again, the out-of-pocket expenses. So you think you have health insurance, but then you go to the doctor, you got to actually give them an extra $1,000 or whatever, $5,000 before you actually get treatment because you need serious treatment. What a stupid system. It's such a stupid system. People that think they're covered aren't actually covered. And not to mention the other side of all the benefits. Under your current system, under the American system, many people are stuck in their jobs because they're afraid of leaving. They have great health insurance through their employer, but they hate their job. But they have great health insurance, so they stay with it. Under a single-payer system, you are now free to go back to school, maybe start a business, and hire people in a small business and not have to worry about getting them health care because they have health care guaranteed to them through a single-payer system. Endless benefits. You have freedom of choice of doctor, of provider. I go to any walk-in clinic, anywhere, because we live under a single-payer system. I have my own doctor, but say she's not available today, I want to make the appointment. Okay, fine. I go to any walk-in clinic, see whatever doctor there, get treatment. And by the way, when it comes to my appointments, I make same-day appointments. I wake up, I don't feel well, I call my doctor. That same day, that afternoon, I can go and see her. So this is under a single-payer system that apparently is too disruptive to move to. But let me continue this dishonesty here.
To me, the goal of the government has to be to demonstrate that we can outcompete private plans and then push them out of the market over time. And that's what we're proposing.
Also, that's absurd. This idea that a public option, first of all, Yang doesn't even support a public option. Pete Buttigieg actually has a more progressive healthcare plan than Andrew Yang does. But this idea that, we'll slowly move to a Medicare for All system and slowly phase out private health insurance. No, you take that approach, like the Elizabeth Warren approach, for example, where, in the first year you pass a public option, and then 3 years later, right before your next election, somehow you're going to pass Medicare for All. You are giving private healthcare companies, private insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, you're giving them 3 years to fight you on Medicare for All. You give them a 3-year window to create a whole new round of BS to fight you on when it comes to this issue. It's absurd. You have, and if you do have a public option, what ends up happening is the private insurance companies can then drain the public system of resources by offsetting all the sick people onto the public system while they have all the healthy people. And then they can turn around and go, hey, look at that. I guess Medicare for All won't work because we just drain the system of resources by offsetting all the sick people onto the public system. I guess you got to go back to private insurance now. to hear this come out of Andrew Yang, who was supposed to be some anti-establishment candidate, who's supposed to be fighting for something else, something different, fighting for people over profits. Andrew Yang, if you didn't know, raises money from wealthy donors as well. He's not just grassroots funded. So it may indicate why he has a shift on this, has a little shift on this issue from where he was when he first began this campaign. But now it's getting to the point where he's straight up lying about what he thinks when it comes to healthcare. If he had a shift and it was an honest shift, fine. You don't support Medicare for all anymore? Fine. Then say you don't support Medicare for all. Don't put it in your damn ads. But you put it in your ads, you are misinforming people on purpose because you know Medicare for all is popular. Even though you know you won't fight for it, you will put it in your ads to get their votes. It's disgusting. This is typical standard politician bullshit.
But I'm confused. Your ad is explicit. Your ad says Medicare for all. Your plan is not Medicare for all. It's not even Medicare for some, because in your plan there's not even a public option.
Our plan is to expand a universal health care system to all Americans. Medicare for all is not the name of a bill. Medicare for all is universal health care for...
Medicare for all is the name of a bill. There's a bill in the Senate, one in the House. Medicare for all is Medicare for all. What else needs to be said? It's obvious to everyone what Medicare for all actually means. Now he's trying to use the name and say, well, what I want is also Medicare for all. Even though it's not, I'm just lying to you and I know it's popular, so I'm going to use the name and say that it's Medicare for all when I know it's not. And just so happens my money's coming from everywhere, not just the people. Let's look at his actual plan, because even on his website, he does this. So let's zoom in here. Because he brings up Medicare for all. To be clear, I support the spirit of Medicare for all. The spirit of Medicare for all. As I said in my other video on this, this is just a way of saying I don't actually support Medicare for all, but I know you support Medicare for all, and I want you to support me. So I'm going to say that I support the spirit of Medicare for all. So I lie just enough that I can get away with pretending that I support Medicare for all, even though I don't. And have since the first day of this campaign. I do believe that swiftly reformatting 18% of our economy and eliminating private insurance for millions of Americans is not a realistic strategy. Yes, it's more realistic to allow people to die because they can't afford healthcare. That's what's realistic to Andrew Yang. So we need to provide a new way forward on healthcare for all Americans. You go down to his plan here. This is his plan. Control the cost of life-saving prescription drugs, invest in technology, change the incentive structure, shift our focus, educating ourselves on preventative care, ensure crucial aspects of well-being, including mental health care, people with disability, diminish the influence of lobbyists. Nothing here. There's not even a public option in this. Like, this is Andrew Yang's Medicare for all. Not Medicare for all, the spirit of Medicare for all. I mean, we can't actually do Medicare for all because that would actually help people. But I support the spirit of Medicare for all because I want your vote. Thank you. Just totally dishonest. And if you're still on the Yang train, it's about time to jump off. He's not who he pretends to be. Straight up. I mean, I'm not sure why you would support. UBI is kind of the only thing that sets him apart from anybody else in the race. But this is my thing on UBI, Universal Basic Income. So I've been a supporter of it for a while because I looked at the studies. There's studies in Canada, studies in the UK, examples where they've implemented it in a limited capacity in certain districts, certain counties, certain cities, and it worked out well. Here's the problem. What happens when everybody in the country gets $1,000? When it's not just a county or a district or a city, but it's every single person. Do you really think that rent isn't going to go up? Do you really think that these companies are going to charge people the same amount of whatever service or product that they've been charging you currently when they know everybody in the country has an extra $1,000? So it's different when it's a county or a city or a district because that small area is not going to have a massive impact on the rest of the country. Those people living in that city with that basic income in this study get to still enjoy life the way it is for everybody else, except now they have an extra $1,000. So it's not going to have an impact on the economy because this little city has it. But when the entire country has an extra $1,000, I imagine that's going to have an impact. So even if, and on top of that, even if you're like, David, whatever, I don't believe you. Okay, fine. Do you think Andrew Yang's actually going to win when he's polling right now at 3% nationally? This race is coming down to Biden and Bernie. Even Elizabeth Warren is barely hitting 15%. You need 15% of the vote in a state, in a primary state, to get delegates. Elizabeth Warren may even be missing out on delegates, even though she is a top 3 candidate right now. Pete Buttigieg missing out on delegates because he's also barely hitting that number. Now, in some of the early states, he's hitting that because he's putting a ton of ad money into those states. But otherwise, I mean, his support nationally, Pete Buttigieg, is like 10%. So this race is coming down between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. At some point, you have to choose a candidate. Who do you actually think will fight for you? So at this point, we're getting down to the voting states here. The primary is starting. You have to back a candidate that can actually, that not only will fight for you, which Bernie Sanders will, he has a 40-year record of proving that, but someone that can actually win. Andrew Yang is not going to win. I'm sorry. So reevaluate and understand that even if you, for whatever reason, love Andrew Yang, you can recognize here that he's lying about his support for Medicare for all. He does not support Medicare for all. And he also has no shot at actually winning this primary race. Sorry, Yang Gang. But had to be said. And look, a lot of Yang supporters, I'm sure, are nice people. Like, I have nothing against Yang supporters. But like, it's time for a wake-up call. Like, we're getting down to it. And same with Warren supporters. Like, if you're a Warren supporter who's a progressive, even though I think a lot of her support right now is really like the Hillary Clinton kind of carryover. But if you're supporting Warren and you're a progressive, I don't know what to say. I mean, you've seen her backtrack on Medicare for all. She barely talks about healthcare now. There's a story about that. Barely mentions it at campaign events. Like, back somebody who's actually going to fight for you. That's kind of what I'm getting to. I mean, that's my point here. Back people that will actually fight for you and can actually win. Okay, some more super chats. Oh, I shouldn't have refreshed. Now I got to find where I stopped. Here we go. Sustin Trudeau says, do you think the DNC will try to rig the primary elections again to try and stop Bernie? I hate this topic. Honestly, I do. Like, I know you guys have character limits, but like, what do you mean rig? Like, the votes themselves weren't rigged. The rigging was done when it came to like the debate schedules, which they have a debate every month. So that part was not rigged. It was rigged when it came to the Democratic Party supporting Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. That's still the case now. I mean, the Democratic leadership is not supporting Bernie Sanders. You see the people on television they usually bring on, they don't support Bernie Sanders. So that, I guess that kind of rigging is still going on. But forget, like, I think my real issue with questions like this, and this is not Sustin Trudeau, it's not directed at you, this is just in general, is that they're very pessimistic. Like, you have to get involved. Regardless of whatever funny business may go on, and there might be funny business because that's the power they have. You have to get involved and help to change things, because the other option is what? Stay at home and, play video games. Like, you have to actually get involved to help change what is going on. You have to get involved, volunteer, phone bank, vote for Bernie, donate. That's how you change it. Don't get bogged down in these, hypothetical discussions about what's happening. Just put your head down, get involved, do everything you can to win. That is what the focus should be. Bernie Saunders sends a super chat saying, donate to Bernie, please, David. Yes, donate to Bernie. I can't as a Canadian, but donate to Bernie. Sorry, it was Bernice Saunders. Interesting name. Yeah, donate to Bernie. Ryan Sipe is back. Says, everyone, please continue to support Cenk and Sahid of California, Jessica of Texas, and many more progressives running for Congress. Thank you. 100%. Cenk Uygur for California's 25th. Sahid Buttar for Nancy Pelosi seat. Jessica Cisneros going up against Henry Cuellar. All those candidates, make sure you back them. That also is that's the other half of the change that has to happen. It isn't just about the presidency. It's also about what's happening, in the House, in the Senate. Back candidates that will support the Bernie Sanders for the people agenda. Cyrus 1976 says the okay boomer thing is not productive. It is as bad as racism. I don't know if you're joking. I hope you are. Though I kind of agree with you that it's not really productive. I wouldn't call it as bad as racism, but yeah, I don't really say okay boomer. It's not really. Look, I know as a millennial who, we're smeared all the time by the press. I don't like when millennials in general are smeared. Millennials like to buy avocado toast, like shit, like I hate shit like that. So I hear you when it comes to don't put everybody into the same basket, because it definitely turns off certain people. I hear that. Even though I do like avocado toast. So it's not, sometimes they're actually correct. Jaybird D says they give more characters as you spend more money. Really? So if you spend more money in a super chat, you can type more? Okay. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's interesting. Macberg says, Macberg to Cyrus 1976 says, shut up, boomer. Max just joking, I imagine, but that was funny. But no, I would not say that. Do not shut up, boomer. Are you a boomer, though, if you're 1976? Isn't that Gen X? I don't think that's boomer. But I guess the whole point of boomer is that you don't actually have to be a boomer to be a boomer. It's kind of the point. DB says, please say corporate bot after saying moderate. Yeah, you're right. I should say that more. Corporate bot moderate. Or just corporate Democrat, I think is more. Because, yeah, moderate gives this idea that, they're the pragmatic ones, the moderates. No, they're just bought by corporations. Is it really pragmatic to be on the side of pharmaceutical companies, be on the side of Wall Street? Is that pragmatic? No, they're just corporate owned candidates or politicians. Interdimensional Steve says, $10 super chat, generous, thank you. Says, do you know what percentage of your audience on average is non-American? Some say YouTube is tweaking American algorithms, but not foreign ones, leading to these channels being full of foreigners. I don't know. Last I checked, I honestly haven't checked in a while because it's kind of always been consistent. Like 10% of my audience is Canadian. It's like 88% American, and like 2% are other countries. So I haven't checked recently though, but I imagine it's similar. Bryce in Minzisk says, a $5 for my favorite David on YouTube. Lo siento, Pac-Man. I can't read Spanish. I'm sorry. So I have no idea. I'm not giving you no free $5 here. Yeah. If I could read that, maybe I would. Lo siento, Pac-Man, eres excelente también. How's that? There you go. I have no idea what that means, just so you know. I have zero idea what that means. Jennifer Arbuckle says, what would you say to someone who doesn't agree with copays because it doesn't incentivize people to stay healthy? Someone said this when I was canvassing. Oh my God, that is so stupid. I don't know. Is it possible to call them a idiot to their face and still expect their vote? People, I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to that. What would you say to someone who doesn't agree with copays? Because I feel like there should be an analogy somewhere. I'm sure there's some kind of analogy I can make that I can't think of right now. What would you say to someone who doesn't agree with co-pays because it doesn't incentivize people? Wait, who does agree or doesn't agree? Someone who doesn't agree with co-pays because it doesn't incentivize people to stay healthy. So basically you're saying co-pays incentivize people to stay, or not you, but the person you're talking to says co-pays incentivize people to stay healthy. Can't help you there. There's probably a good argument. There's a million good arguments, but I mean, in terms of like some kind of analogy I can make, there's probably one out there, but I can't think of it. Maybe the chat could help with that. But thank you, Jennifer. I would need time to think about, like, really process that information. Jared Aguiar says, I'll edit the audio and send it to you. Contact info. Edit what audio? Did you send an earlier super chat that I missed or that I read and I forgot? I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Jennifer Arbuckle says you can say the same about $15 an hour as you would UBI. Honestly, yeah. But that's why it needs to, like, you need to, there needs to be like multiple ways to essentially help people, which is why, like, I mean, if Bernie was just running on $15 an hour, yeah, that would be a problem, but he's not doing that. Andrew Yang's whole thing is UBI. So it's not like Bernie's saying $15 an hour is enough. You don't need healthcare. Like, that's not the approach. So it's an all-encompassing approach. You need minimum wage raise. You need healthcare for all, free public college, like all of these things. All of these are important pieces. When put together, then create a more just society. But by focusing on one issue, like just UBI or even just minimum wage, yeah, it's not going to solve the problem. So that's kind of, I mean, that ultimately is the real issue with Andrew Yang here, is that if he's not going to support Medicare for all, I mean, how are you going to help people in healthcare? Like $1,000 a month, not enough for cancer treatment or really much of any healthcare. Oh, for your audio podcast from Jared Aguiar. No, that's too much work. I prefer doing this stuff myself, but I appreciate the suggestion. All right, I think I still have another story. I got so many super chats. All right. Yes, Michael Moore. Another Michael Moore clip. All right, I think this is the last story, and then I'll give you my New Year's resolutions, which I'm probably going to continue adding to. But all right, so Michael Moore was on Democracy Now! And let me start over. So Michael Moore was on Democracy Now! And discussed why it's important to back Bernie Sanders. So I want to share this clip because I think Michael Moore makes several good arguments here.
This just drives me crazy. Oh, you know, Trump won all these working class votes in Michigan and Pennsylvania. No. What happened was that the Democratic Party didn't stand up in the way that they should have for what the youth wanted, for what people of color needed. And there were 90,000 people in Michigan, almost 90,000, who went to the polls, mostly Democrats, and very large numbers of them in Detroit, Flint, Pontiac, Saginaw. These are all black cities, majority black. They stood in line in the cold for 2 to 3 hours to vote. They went in there and they voted for state rep, state senate, county commission. We don't have dog catcher. We have drain commissioner, the person in charge of the sewage. That's the lowest name on the ballot. They stood there. They voted for the Democrats all down ballot and left the top box blank. 90,000. She only lost Michigan by 10, 11,000 votes. 90,000 wanted to send a message to the Democratic Party. You forgot us a long time ago out here, and we will not put up with this anymore. We're not going to vote for Trump, but we're not going to tolerate you sending us another Republican light Democrat. If we go that route, if we go that route, it's guaranteed we will lose the Electoral College. We will win when we put somebody on that ballot that excites the base, women, people of color, young people. When they wake up that morning, they feel the way that many of us, many of you watching, felt the morning that you were going to, in 2008, and you were going to get to go and vote for Barack Obama, and you couldn't believe this was happening in your lifetime. That if you remember that feeling, I'm not talking about, we're not going to discuss his 8 years. I'm just talking about that morning. That feeling has got to happen in the 18 to 35-year-old demographic. It has to happen with people of color and with women. We already feel that way. They already feel that way. It's just, will they come out and vote for a centrist, moderate candidate? I don't think that is going to happen. They're going to come out and vote for the fighter, for the person that shares their values. And the values of the majority of this country are the progressive values. In my opinion, I'm for Bernie Sanders, but I understand why people want to vote for Elizabeth Warren or I don't know. Well, nobody else actually has those particular values.
I just want to pause there for a second. So Michael Moore makes a great point here, and this reminds me of MSNBC, Rachel Maddow. After Donald Trump won the election in 2016, Rachel Maddow had a segment on the Jill Stein voters. How Jill Stein cost Hillary Clinton the election because those voters, in Michigan, that could have gone to Hillary, they went to Jill Stein instead. Multiple problems with this. It assumes that Jill Stein voters would have voted for Hillary over just staying home, which I don't think. I think most Jill Stein voters would have just stayed home if she wasn't on the ballot. They wouldn't have voted for Hillary Clinton. And it also ignores the fact that Michael Moore brings up here that about 90,000 people that voted Democrat down ballot left the top field blank, didn't vote for either Hillary or Trump. That tells you everything you need to know. You need a candidate in 2020 that actually excites people out to vote. That not even just gets those 90,000 to vote for the Democrat on the ticket, but also brings out young people that didn't come out for Hillary Clinton, brings out the typical non-voter that didn't come out for Hillary Clinton, brings out independents that didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. The only candidate that excites all three of these bases is Bernie Sanders. He has the young people. You need to excite those people out to vote in 2020. He has those people. He has young people. He has a typical non-voter because Bernie's a lifelong independent. Bernie has called out the establishment in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party his entire career, not even including the media establishment, the corporate establishment. Bernie Sanders has a track record of calling out whoever, regardless of whatever issue, because his allegiance is to the people. It's not to any corporation, not to any party. It's to the people. That brings out your typical non-voter because they finally see a politician on the ballot that isn't your typical standard robot politician, someone that actually has a 40-year record fighting for people. And on top of that, that also goes to the point for independent voters. Many independents, many who stayed home, many progressive independents who stayed home, Bernie Sanders brings those people out. So this is just these are points that I hope more people hear. I hope the cable news audience hears, because that's who needs to hear this. The people that watch my show generally, they know this stuff. But if you watch my show, share this with your friends and family. Not even just this video, but this argument. Tell them about this. Show them Michael Moore talking about this. That's who you need to reach. You need to reach those people who still think that Joe Biden's the most electable one, even though he has the same strategy that Hillary Clinton did in 2016, reaching out to the conservative voter. How'd that work out? All Hillary did was suppress the Democratic base, suppress young people, suppress independents, suppress typical non-voters. You need to bring out the people that didn't come out in 2016. And those Democratic voters that came out for Hillary in 2016, they're going to come out anyways, regardless of the candidate in 2020. So you have those people regardless. So on top of that, you have to get the people that in 2016 did not come out to vote. Bernie Sanders has those people. Let me continue this.
So both of them are good. I've had Elizabeth in a couple of my films. But Bernie Sanders has the record. When Elizabeth said there a few weeks ago that she voted Republican until 1996, that really kind of took me. But I think, okay, well, we welcome everybody, and if you used to vote for Republicans, fine. But Bernie Go back to Bernie in 1963, the photo of him. I don't know if anybody has it in the control room, of him being arrested as a college student in a civil rights demonstration in Chicago. 1963, that's Bernie Sanders. They're hauling him away. He's not doing the thing that they teach us to do in civil disobedience, where you just go limp and let them take. He's fighting the cops, you know. That's Bernie Sanders. He's never changed. And so I know that there's a history. So many of his ideas are now the popular way in terms of minimum wage, in terms of equal pay, mass incarceration, these things that you know. And look, I mean, just like any candidate, he's a politician, you know, people watching this will have their disagreements or whatever, but one thing you can't disagree with is he has been true to his convictions. He will fight like hell for us. The fact that 52% of young people are for him in the latest poll, 52% of young voters are for him. The millennial that's running, 2%. 2% of 18 to 35-year-olds are for the person their age. Young people want.
You're talking about Poop Buttigieg.
Yeah, Poop Buttigieg. Yes, I'm not trying to avoid trying to pronounce the name. It is Buttigieg. No, but the youngest people want the oldest person. Why? Why? How could that be? I think it's because they know their future is screwed. The future of this planet is. They probably think, and they maybe not be right, that it's already too late. Bernie. He's fighting for this. They know he's fighting for their future. Bernie has no future. No offense if he's watching. I mean, live long and prosper. But let's just admit he's in the final quarter of his life, you know? And he's willing to give up his final years to fight so that these 18 to 35-year-olds will have a future. And they know that. That's why they're for them. And I say to adults my age, maybe we owe it to the young people, because we were supposed to leave them a better country. We were supposed to leave them a better planet. And we, the 60s and 70s generation, we haven't done that. So maybe we owe it to these young people to get behind the person they want. It's their future. That's our responsibility.
100%. Michael Moore hits the nail on the head. I mean, that's exactly right. And that's an argument that I'm not sure if it works. The last argument there that he makes, like, I agree with it. I'm just not sure if it works on, you know, the typical boomer, telling them you owe it to young people to vote for Bernie Sanders. Look who they're with. Trust in them. It may work, you know. Maybe if your grandma loves you enough, tell your grandma that. Maybe it works on her. But he's so right. And by the way, so he gives a little, you know, a slight nod, or at least you know, an openness to Elizabeth Warren here. But you should listen to his podcast. So especially listen to, so he had an episode with Alex Press, I believe. I want to make sure that's her name. I'm positive it's Alex Press from Jacobin, right? Alex Press of Jacobin. Yeah, Alex Press of Jacobin. So look up that episode. Michael Moore's podcast is called Rumble. Listen to the episode with Alex Press. He gives his real feelings on Elizabeth Warren. So look, he's going to be conciliatory, or not conciliatory, but he's going to be a little more kind, you know, on television maybe. But no, he gives his real thoughts on Elizabeth Warren in that podcast. It's well worth listening to. Also, the episode with Anand Gidardas, fantastic episode, just beautiful. Listen to that one as well. Don't listen to the one with Robert De Niro. The episode with Robert De Niro, I couldn't finish it. Once Robert De Niro mentioned that he likes Bloomberg, Joe Biden and Bloomberg, I'm like, all right, done with this episode and moved on. But Alex Press, Anand Gidardas, I really enjoy Michael Moore. Like I don't always agree with him, but I enjoy hearing his opinion because he's an honest guy. Like he gives his thoughts, he tells it like he sees it. And he has a long history in this. I mean, he backed Bernie when Bernie first ran for Congress back in the 90s or late 80s. So he's been in this fight for a long time. And really, the American people have caught up with him and Bernie Sanders. They've been there for a while. Everyone else has finally caught up. Mostly young people growing up in this situation, recognizing how ridiculous it is. Student loan debt, cost of housing, the cost of living in general. And young people, you know, being more engaged in politics, being online, understanding what is broken with the system, understanding how it's rigged. Young people are more engaged and they know who can fix it. And that candidate and the movement is with Bernie Sanders. All right. I think it's going to be my New Year's resolutions and then super chats. I don't really have any, presentation for my New Year's resolutions. I kind of just want to discuss them. So let me go. I wrote some of them down here. Let me bring them up. All right. So some New Year's resolutions for me here, David Dole at the Rational National. I want to, I said this at the beginning of this live stream. I'm going to begin uploading these weekly live streams in audio podcast form. So every Friday, today's Thursday, but usually this live streams every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. I want to upload this to as an audio podcast. So I'm already on. If you look up the Rational National on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, all that stuff. I think I'm pretty much everywhere. SoundCloud as well. So subscribe now on your podcast app. Subscribe to the Rational National, and I'll begin putting stuff out. And maybe even occasionally, like this is kind of what I wanted to do before. So hard finding time. I want to give some random audio content just for the podcast audience. So whether it's like a 5-minute clip of me, I have a thought and I want to share it. It could be something as simple as that, or it could be like 30-minute discussion about something. I don't know. So that stuff could randomly happen. So the best way to know when I put anything out in audio form is to just subscribe to me on any of those platforms. Just look up the Rational National or look up my name. You'll see it below, and you'll find me. So that's one of my New Year's resolutions. Another one, this one, I'm just reading it. It's like weird to share this. I want to improve my posture. If you notice a lot, I'm like leaning forward, mostly because my mic is right here. But no, I want to I got some problems with my back for real. So I got my back. I have random issues. Like I go through these spurts where I work out a lot for 3 months, and then I hurt my back and I stop working out. It's happened 3 or 4 times, and I'm not joking. I've gone a long time working out, then I hurt my back and I stop working out and I have to pick it back up again. So I want to improve my posture to really help prevent that from happening. And I got to figure out ways to do that. I've seen some YouTube clips with some suggestions, so maybe I'll do it that way. But if anybody in the super chat has any suggestions for improving posture, let me know, because I need to do that for real. Also, another New Year's resolution, I want to stream on Twitch consistently. So this is something I wanted to do for a while. Twitch is a little more laid back. I might just be playing video games, but I'll also be talking with people. Very laid back. It wouldn't be like this kind of format. So if you want to follow me on Twitch, the link is below. Twitch.tv/TheRationalNational. That's where you find me. Follow me on there and you'll know when I go live. I want to do it more consistently. It would likely be at a late night, after 10 p.m. Eastern probably. And it may just be for an hour and a half. Maybe I'm playing a game, chatting with people. Maybe I want to, there's a clip someone shares in the chat I want to share with people. Whatever it is, I want it to be more interactive, kind of, engage more with the audience directly, because the audience is a lot smaller on Twitch, so it's a lot easier to do that. So Twitch is something I definitely want to do more consistently. And also, this last one, I want to get a little more personal about, and this likely a lot of it would be on Twitch, more personal about issues that I've dealt with that I think if I discuss them, I can help people more with certain issues, be it mental health, sexuality, culture. So I want to get more into that stuff, get more personal, and not just focus strictly on politics, even though this channel will always be politics. But in terms of my Twitch content and maybe the audio content I put out sometimes, I want to have more diverse discussions about different topics that aren't just about electoral politics. So that's another resolution. And those are my resolutions. I'm probably going to add to them because I always tend to add to my goals. But for now, that's what it is. All right. Let me start taking super chats. I've been taking them the whole time. So many super chats. I love the support. Y'all are fantastic. Let me refresh this. My back's already hurting. Really got to fix his posture. All right. Where was I? All right. Jennifer Arbuckle says, you can say the same about... Oh, I read that already. White Seed sends a super chat saying, how can anyone trust Yang to decriminalize drugs when he is against Medicare for all? Big pharma lobbies heavily against both for similar reasons. Good point. Good point. And even apart, like Andrew Yang, can you really imagine him fighting hard for anything? He has no track record. Like, go back and look at Obama. There was all this hope in Obama. He had no track record, and then he was taken over by wealthy donors during the election, and it all changed. Like, you got to support someone that has a track record, that was fighting for these issues when nobody was paying attention. The only candidate that applies here is Bernie Sanders. That's how it is. Mark Keister says, save for later. Big $20 donation, thank you. Says, save for later. Mind relaying my save for later. Oh, like now? Mind relaying my message, broadcasting periodically our need to register as Dems in closed, semi-closed states. To Mike Figueredo and Kyle Kulinski, I'm mailing letters overnight, but I cannot find a P.O. box for them. Oh, like you want me to tell Mike Figueredo and Kyle Kulinski to also discuss the vote for Bernie stuff? Yeah, I'm sure I could do that. The thing, I don't watch all their content, so I'm not sure if they're doing it already. Like I do watch other people occasionally, but they could already be doing it, and I don't know. But definitely, yeah. Like, or even just on Twitter, people can engage anybody yourself. Anyone that has like a big platform that you think is going to that can get the message out to really share with people that, hey, make sure you're registered in your state. Make sure you can actually caucus or primary. Then you can do it through Twitter. Twitter is definitely a good way to get to people that have platforms. Ricky Williams says, donated to Yang early, only for UBI to be in the discussion. Regret after his Medicare for All comments. Only giving to progressives like AOC, Cenk, etc. I hear you, Ricky. I'd be doing the same thing. It seems like Yang did actually turn off a lot of people now that he's backing off Medicare for All. But yeah, I hear you. Eric Williamson sends a super chat saying, Bernie needs to talk about nationalizing oil teleco. Has that been in the discussion at all? Like, is that in his platform at all? I hear you. I that's something worth discussing. To be fair, I don't know enough about the potential impact of that, and like the pros and cons, because it hasn't really been in the discussion, but it's something definitely worth bringing up. MN says, keep up the great work, Double D. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jennifer Arbuckle says, I canvass for Shahid Buttar on Sundays in San Francisco. Nice. That's what I like to hear. People that are involved in these campaigns. Fantastic. Jennifer Arbuckle said, I meant to say copays. No copays. Let me go back to her tweet. So Jennifer tweeted about, super chatted about, what would you say to someone who doesn't agree with no copays? Yeah, because it doesn't incentivize people to stay healthy. Someone said this while canvassing. So somebody told Jennifer Arbuckle while she was canvassing that they don't agree with no copays because they think copays incentivizes people to stay healthy. I would tell that person, even if you think that's true, the impact that copays have on families that can't afford health care is too great to ignore. So even if you happen to think, so even like agree on her terms, say, I'm sure some people stay healthy because they're afraid of having to pay that copay, but sometimes you get cancer and you couldn't prevent it. Sometimes, I don't know, whatever happens to you, you get a disease. I mean, many things that people like that people are sick over, a lot of it is simply like in their genes. It's not because they, were smoking all their life. It's because people get cancer because they get cancer. Like, it just happens. So ask those people, are you content with someone who just gets cancer randomly or gets a disease randomly? Are you content with that person now being in debt because they randomly got a disease that they couldn't prevent? So this idea of copays, like defending copays, bonkers. Amazing to me. But thank you, Jennifer. I think that's a discussion that is worth having. Like thinking of these arguments that come up, that people make, that these absurd arguments that people make to justify the current system to themselves. It's just it's really crazy. Where was I? Jared Aguilar says, for your audio podcast. I think you tweeted that earlier. Did I read the same things twice? I don't know. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, I edit my own podcast. Ricky Williams says, people complain their taxes subsidize lower income workers, then fight against Medicare for all, which would actually make companies like Walmart pay. Let me read this again. People complain their taxes subsidize lower income workers, then fight against Medicare for all, which would actually make companies like Walmart pay. Yeah, great point. Walmart underpays their employees. Those employees then have to live off the system because Walmart isn't paying for them. So the taxpayer is subsidizing those employees. Like, the Medicare for all would actually make, large companies and the wealthiest pay more to help everybody and not fit the bill on the taxpayer. Bryce Inman Zisk says, don't have to read aloud. Don't send me a super chat that I can't read, but don't have to read out loud. I was saying, sorry, Pac-Man, you're excellent also. He's a naive Spanish speaker, so I thought, naive. He's a native Spanish speaker, so I thought I'd extend an olive branch. All right. Tim Amel says, as Bernie's chances of getting the nomination increases, I'm bracing for huge pushback from establishments, especially the establishment media. You've been seeing it the whole time, though. Like, this is like somebody, a few people actually today tweeted about this because it was funny. Like, the idea that Bernie Sanders hasn't already been attacked by the mainstream press or hasn't already been vetted is absurd. They've been doing it the whole time. I mean, it got to the point where they had to actually ignore him because there is nothing to criticize him over. When you have somebody who has a 40-year record of saying the same thing, what are you going to criticize them over? Like, this is why they have to make crap up. They have to pretend that Biden's more electable when he's not, because there's no actual argument against Bernie Sanders. So, yeah, they're already doing it. I mean, sure, brace for more pushback, I guess, but they're already doing it. Liquid's Back says, Cobra Stretch helps my back. Cobra Stretch. Yes. The yoga in general. I should do more yoga. But thank you for that, Liquid. Celeste M.I. says, ergonomic chair. Well, this chair is from IKEA. So doesn't that mean it's inherently ergonomic? I don't know. Actually, I like this chair a lot because it's not too soft. And in terms of the camera, I know exactly where I'm going to sit on it. So a chair would help, I guess. A different chair maybe, but no, I need to actually like strengthen the muscles in my back. It's not just about doing the show. But thank you, Celeste. Deborah Lake sends a $2 super chat with no message. Thank you, Deborah. Oh my God, so many super chats coming in. The support is overwhelming. Everybody's saying it. Support's amazing. It's me, John B. says, the tech stuff is really interesting to me. I wanted to ask, do you use a green screen behind you? Can you post your tech setup somewhere? Thanks. Yeah, the funny thing is the tech stuff I love too. Like I super enjoy, I know it sounds weird, but like I enjoy setting up my setup. I enjoyed putting the monitor where it is. I enjoy putting the camera. Like I enjoy setting up all that stuff because I went to school for video production. So I'm really into the tech stuff. This mic, when I got it, it was like Christmas. Not even just the fact that the audio was better, but that I got to set up a new mic was like a fun process. So I hear you. Yeah, maybe I'll post it somewhere. I'm not sure where I would post my tech setup. maybe that's a Twitch thing. If that comes up on Twitch, I can like get into more detail. But basically, it's what I told you. Shure SM7B, a mic stand for the mic, 2 box lights, and a cloud lifter for the mic. And then I have a Canon C100 is the camera. So I can plug my XLR mic directly into the camera, which is awesome when it comes to live streaming, when it comes to editing. I don't have to sync anything. It's all just there. So that pretty much is the setup. I'm not sure what else I would add to that. But yeah. Sarah's Boar Army says, wearing a bonnet corset a little a day helps posture. Boned corset. There is like a, yeah, actually I have one of those back things, like where you strap around your back, your lower back. I may actually wear that more often. The only problem is it like limits my breathing because it has to go tight around your stomach. So I have less, like when it comes to speaking, that could be an issue. But maybe, you know, not wear it while I'm shooting, but wear it before and after. That's definitely a possibility. Thank you, Sarah. Mark Keister says, I can help you with your back. Same handle on Twitter. All right, I'll write you down. See what you got for me. Mark Keister. I think I'm saying your name right. Keister. All right, cool. Trondine sends a super chat, no message, thank you. Andrea Morgan says, been playing the shit out of God of War this week. Yo, God of War is so good. God of War on PS4. Like, I played them all. But God of War on PS4, when did I play that? I forget if it was I think it was last Christmas I was playing it. When did it come out? Last year? Because I think I was playing it over Christmas last year. Whenever it was. Goddamn. I could not put it down. Like, once you really get into it, it's like exactly my kind of game. Like third person action, kind of a collectathon, not collectathon, but like you can grow your character. I don't know. It's so engaging. It looks amazing. The story's engaging. Yeah, I friggin' love God of War. Really, really cool. Actually, that reminds me of back in the day, the very first God of War that came out, game director David Jaffe signed a copy of God of War for me. I have a signed copy of God of War, the PS2 one, from David Jaffe, which is pretty cool. That's back when I was like super into gaming. I'm still into gaming, but I don't like talk about it as much as I used to. I used to actually write about games, so my life is a little different now. Brandon J says, finally can donate something, LOL. What do you use in your hair? It looks perfect for pomade. I use it's usually just it's like I don't know what it's called. Like it's like a moisturizer, but you put it in your hair afterwards, or like a conditioner. No, it's moisturizer, I think, but it's for hair, and you put it after you dry your hair. I usually just use that. Otherwise, sometimes if I'm going to be out for a while and I can't rely on this, I'll put in like, I don't know what it's called. I'm so bad with names. Like molding clay, is that what it is? Or like not wax. Sometimes I have wax and I have like some kind of clay thing. So either or works for me. Speaking of which, I need a haircut. I think I'll get one next week. It's getting too long. Peter King says, all it takes for Dem to win the presidency is to win back Rust Belt area. Those who vote blue will vote blue and the same goes to red. Do you agree? All it takes well, yeah, essentially, yeah. I mean, that's why Bernie Sanders is the best candidate, because he will win the Rust Belt area. And I think he'll win even more. I mean, on election day, Bernie Sanders won West Virginia over Donald Trump in polling. In exit polls, Bernie Sanders beat Trump in West Virginia. I believe Trump had the biggest gap over Hillary Clinton in West Virginia out of any state. Or at least, I think out of any state. It was like 20 points or something. It was like 20 or 30 points. And Bernie was beating him by 2 points in West Virginia on election day. I think Bernie can win a lot more states than even just the Rust Belt. But I agree with you in general. That is what the Democratic needs. Daniel Junkins, did you know Yang removed single-payer healthcare policy page from campaign website? Oh, I did not know that. I guess that's why when I was showing the ABC clip earlier, he was saying that that Yang had a new healthcare plan out. He must have got rid of single payer. Where is Yang getting his money from? Is kind of the first thing that I would go to after hearing about that. Al Muhammad says, "Hey you," in a sticker. Hey Al, thank you. Kalan Costa says, "What do you think the media strategy will be now that they can't deny Bernie could possibly win the nomination?" I think they'll take him seriously and try to act like he's unelectable. That's kind of what they're going to do. But it's going to be hard because there are clips. I saw a clip from April, Morning Joe Scarborough, talking about how Bernie Sanders would beat Donald Trump. This is from April. Donnie Deutsch was on the show saying, "Oh, I think Bernie would lose in a landslide." And then Joe Scarborough comes on and says, "No, actually, Donnie, I think you're wrong. I think Bernie would win against Donald Trump because there were a lot of voters that voted for Trump that would have voted for Bernie, but didn't make the argument that I always make, is that how about all the non-voters? How about the young people that didn't come out for Hillary Clinton?" So there's that on top of it. So they can try and make the argument against Bernie Sanders' electability, but there's clips of some of these people saying that he is electable. So I think when you make the right argument, most people get it. It's just a matter of getting those arguments in front of people that normally watch cable news where those arguments aren't made. That's the hard part, which is why you got to share videos like this, or share these arguments, share clips of Michael Moore, people they know, people that your family and friends are like, "Oh, Michael Moore, I know him." Share a clip of him talking about how Bernie's electable. I think that stuff helps. Mark Heister again says, they received too many tweets to break through. That's in relation to the previous tweet. I hear you. I get a lot of tweets too. It's impossible to read them all. Trondine says, "Superdelegates not rigged. Please explain rule change." So superdelegates have no say until the second ballot, meaning if no candidate gets 51% of the delegates on the first ballot, then it goes to a second ballot where super Democrats. they kind of are super Democrats, where super delegates get a say. So this is why one would hope Bernie Sanders can win 51% or more of the delegates, or have them come over from Warren and Bernie combined forces and bring their delegates together. But again, this is why it's really a two-person race, Bernie Sanders or Biden. I think if Bernie begins winning the early states, and it looks like he may, it could really create a situation where Bernie's going to be hard to beat, and he would actually hit that number, and it wouldn't need to go to a second ballot. So that's my hope. Nick Raymond says, "Sorry if this sounds like a conspiracy theory, but are the polls completely fabricated? None of the older people I know like Biden at this point." It depends where you live, right? I mean, so like what you're saying right there is anecdotal. So a lot of older people, based on polling, like Joe Biden. At the same time, polling definitely underpolls people that are typical non-voters, that are young people. I mean, how many young people even answer their phone, let alone these polls done through cell phones? Many of them are just landlines. Polling, I think, is definitely off, but we really won't know until states start voting. So until the Iowa caucus and until New Hampshire, we're really not going to have an idea of how off the polls are. Eddie Gonzalez sends a super chat with a little thing saying, "#1 fan." Thank you, Eddie, and thank you for your generous donation. By the way, all your donations are generous. I don't want to act like I'm just, just saying certain people are generous. You're all generous. Whatever you can give is super. I appreciate it. Hot Mustard Gas 20 says, "I think Bernie needs to fight off the lies about Medicare for all. He should be tougher. I also hope that he does more TV ads to get older voters." Yeah, TV ads really are important when it comes to getting the over 45 group, because that's where their eyeballs are. Especially, I mean, over 45 is maybe being too generous with the age. It's really like over 60. Like, that's the cable news audience, is over 60. So that's where he really needs to get some support. But at the same time, part of it is having people on cable news fighting for him, making these arguments. Ads are ads, and many people just don't even look at ads, or they aren't all that engaged. They think, oh, an ad, they're paying for this. They're going to talk up themselves, obviously. So you need people on cable news, on CNN, on MSNBC, actually making the arguments for the Bernie Sanders campaign. God, my voice is getting dry. Can you do your Beto arm waving impression again? That video was funny and great. I got to be honest, I forget what I did in that video. If you go back and watch my probably last video on Beto, maybe I did a video when he dropped out, but he had like, I don't know. He had some weird, he had like multiple resurgences in his campaign where he had like a second wave, like I'm running again. And then a third time, I'm running again. It's like, Beto, we know you're running. You have no support. It's not going to happen. And then he eventually dropped out. But just go back and watch that video if you want to laugh. I don't remember exactly what my impression was. Liquid's Back says, if Bernie wins nomination, you should have a crossover stream with Kyle, Mike, etc. That makes parodies mainstream media coverage on election night. Well, I imagine on election night, we're all going to have our own streams going. That's probably what's going to happen. Or I don't know. I mean, it'd be cool to like go to California for election night and like join the Young Turks or something and just be like, hey, what's up? And be on their live stream coverage. But I'll probably end up doing my own live stream. I imagine that's where I'm going to be for that. But a crossover stream would be kind of cool. It's just different when we're not all in the same place. It's a little tougher. There's always like a little slight delay when it comes to voice and that kind of thing. Like especially when you get multiple people into the stream. Though I did it with Twitch when it came to the Canadian election and it worked out fine. So who knows? It's totally possible. It does sound like fun. But if I could be like, I wouldn't mind being in America on election day, just to experience that there. Oh my God, so many, so many more super chats. Y'all are really supportive. Progressive Voice says, ice cream or frozen yogurt, favorite sport? Oh man, ice cream or frozen yogurt. I gotta say frozen yogurt, mainly because I can have issues with milk. Does frozen yogurt have milk too? I don't even know anymore. But those frozen yogurt spots where you can put like, you know, the candy and all that crap on it, I love that stuff. So, but I love frozen dessert. Frozen yogurt, yeah, frozen yogurt. I just haven't had it in so long, I almost forgot what it tasted like. But no, frozen yogurt with like the peanuts and like the caramel on top and the M&Ms and the candy. Yeah, frozen yogurt for sure. But frozen yogurt, understanding I get to put all that shit on top of it. So not just frozen yogurt by itself. Favorite sport, it's got to be hockey. Though, to be honest, I'm becoming a little more open to basketball. After the Raptors won during that playoff run, a lot of Canadians got into basketball during those playoffs. So yeah, I'm getting more into basketball, and I haven't really, like, it's funny. I used to watch hockey all the time, and I just don't really watch it anymore. Like if the Leafs make the playoffs, I'll watch it. But in terms of the regular season, I think sports in general, I'm kind of off the regular season. I don't have time. If I had more time, I would do it. But playoffs for me is where it's at. So any Toronto team that makes the playoffs, even if it's baseball, which I don't really care too much for, but even if it's baseball, I'll watch it if the Jays make the playoffs. Waleed Issa says, as chairman of Muslims for a Better North Carolina, I formally endorse Senator Sanders. Thank you for announcing that on my show. Waleed Issa supports Bernie Sanders, chairman for a Better North Carolina. Thank you for making that announcement on Super Chat on my show. Thank you. But that's awesome. M. Mockable sends a Super Chat with no message. Thank you. Citizen01 says, good chance you have anterior pelvic tilt. APT. I don't know what that is. I'll look it up. I think I just have a shitty back. I think that's the medical definition. Shitty back. That's my back. Ryan Sipe says, do you go running as a hobby and for exercise? I do not. Mostly weights is kind of what I do. I did used to go on the elliptical a lot, and I may start doing that again. That for me is like a serious workout. Ellipticals can really, like 30 minutes on elliptical on an elliptical going hard. I leave that machine just like drenched in sweat. So maybe I'll do that again. Steven Alvera says, did you play The Last of Us, and are you looking forward to part 2? Thanks for all the videos, by the way, Bernie 2020. Yes, I did. I played The Last of Us when it first came out on, was it PS3? Yeah, because I don't think it was out on PS4. It eventually came out on PS4, but yeah, I played it on PS3. And fantastic game. Definitely looking forward to part 2. Yeah, I'll play that for sure. Matt W says, do you lose a cut of super chat money to YouTube, bank, etc.? How much is Patreon better? Yes, YouTube takes a piece of super chat. I'm not sure. Last I heard, I think it's like 30%. It's something crazy. They take a lot. The link's below the video. There's a Streamlabs link where you can actually write a question in, and you can pay via PayPal, credit card, however. So you can donate that way. That money, I believe, goes to me 100%. I think Streamlabs is 100%. If not, it's like a tiny little fee. So it's much better than Super Chat. Unfortunately, obviously Streamlabs is not going to be built into YouTube, but on Twitch, I will definitely be relying on Streamlabs, and I'll take questions through Streamlabs on Twitch. Also, there's also a PayPal link, which is a direct donation to me, which is also, I guess, a better way to give. But yeah. And yeah, Patreon is better, I would say. Trondine says, not in 2016, David. Superdelegates equal very rigged. I don't know what you're trying to say. But yeah, superdelegates, if you're saying they rigged the process in 2016, yes. No, 100%. But it wasn't even the issue. Like, it wasn't even just the delegates. It was how it was reported on television. Back in 2016, actually, I have old videos that I will never show again because I was horrible back then. But back during 2016, there's a video that I covered from MSNBC, like a segment. They were talking about, the election. Like, it was in the middle of the primary, and they were showing who had, the most delegates on the list, like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Hillary had this massive lead over Bernie. But it's because they were including the superdelegates even before they voted. So by communicating that to people, watching that, people at home think, wow, Hillary has this huge lead. Bernie has no chance, even though the superdelegates hadn't voted yet. They were just including them in the totals for no reason except to make Hillary Clinton look like she had more delegates than she actually did, making her look stronger, discouraging people, once again, from voting for Bernie because they see Hillary Clinton as, oh, I guess she's going to win for sure. Why even bother voting for Bernie Sanders? So that's how they were used in 2016. They can't do that this time. So there's going to be less of an impact that superdelegates have during this process for sure. All right. Let me retweet. Refresh. This is how long the stream has been. When I start mixing words, which, let's be honest, happens quite a bit, then it's been a long stream. It's been almost 3 hours. All right, I think I got all the super chats. Are we done? I've refreshed them. I think we're good. Awesome. All right. Since there's like a minute delay, and whenever I imagine that the super chats are done, people all of a sudden start giving me super chats. So let me give you a minute to catch up. I want to be out of here by 5:46. It's 5:44 right now. So you got 2 minutes. That gives you a minute essentially to get a message in. If you have anything left to say. So what should I do while we're about to go? I don't know. Let me see what I can share. As I was saying earlier, let me bring up the Michael Moore podcast that I think you should listen to. Oh, good. It's on YouTube as well. You know what? Very easy. Maybe I would make a segment out of this if I knew where to find it in this stream. It's in here somewhere. Where Michael Moore talks about Elizabeth Warren.
I actually want to tell a story about this with Medicare for All side to this coin of that they sort of are these loan
I don't know where
policies meant as
time ago. And I've tried to do my best with my films. I've tried to present attention that has been taken from them.
Right, yes. But yes, I know what you mean, that it seems...
Allow me to search around for a second. I want to see if I could find this, because Michael Moore's true feelings on Elizabeth Warren are really worth sharing.
Because you're right. I've been given a certain... that woman did not become president. I could make a case that I have a feeling I know what her presidency would have looked like, and none of us would have been very happy about it.
Right.
I'll just go on the record and say that. But so I understand why a lot of people I know like Elizabeth Warren, and when I say people, it's a euphemism for women who feel.
Here we go. I'm gonna do something on this. I'm not sure how long this goes, so I may have to edit out. This becomes a segment. If this ends up like a 5-minute piece.
So I understand why.
Here we go. I want to share this because it's really
about it.
Right.
I'll just go on the record and say that.
All right. Let me do a proper. See if I can throw this together last minute. Michael Moore recently shared his thoughts on Elizabeth Warren during an episode of his podcast called Rumble, when he had on Alex Press of Jacobin. So Alex Press is a big Bernie supporter. Michael Moore shared his true thoughts on Elizabeth Warren, and I want to share this with you.
But so I understand why a lot of people I know like Elizabeth Warren, and when I say people, it's a euphemism for women who feel very shafted by what happened in the 2016 election. I had this scene in my last movie. I took it out. It was just so painful to watch. This 90-year-old woman, it's probably her last election, went to sleep early when everybody was saying that Hillary was going to be the president. She wakes up to the news, and her granddaughters, I think, they have their phones on. They're filming her, as they tell her.
Oh my God.
That Donald Trump is the president. She wakes up to that news, and the look on her face and the tremble that this is how she was going to leave our world with this.
Sure.
It was heartbreaking.
Of course. And I mean, I'm a young woman. I understand this desire for, this sort of sense of not only that representation matters, but that it's a fundamental sort of marker of the equality or lack thereof of a society if their leaders are not sort of representative of the population at large. That said, I mean, there's two things about Warren and Sanders and their differences. One is that, women there are more women who like Sanders than there are men. I mean, this is not, if we're asking what do women want, of course, anecdotally, you and I both, I'm sure, know many women who love Warren for these reasons. But I mean, just objectively, it's not the case that women want Warren. I think women are, a giant group that's half the population. They're internally divided like any other identity. And a lot of especially young women want Sanders, and they want Sanders because he, again, now that some people might argue with this, and Warren certainly has plenty of decent policies as far as dealing with feminist issues or women's issues, rights in the workplace, things like that. But Sanders has long been sort of an advocate in a way that people like me trust him on these issues. So as far as what's best for women, if you're afraid to criticize Warren on the basis that you think Sanders is a better candidate, I don't think you need to have this sensitivity because, again, Sanders himself cares about the issues. And I think we should all, be able to talk about really who do we think is going to serve women's interests the best, working class people's interests the best, who has the vision to get there. And if you have had experience with Warren personally, I mean, it sounds like you've also met Biden. Obviously, you and Sanders go way far back. Yours is an important voice that can give people insight, especially when we're talking about a sense of, politicians are people that they're almost black boxes to most of us, right? We don't actually know what they're thinking. We only have their records to go by. So if you can tell us and tell people about really what you think these people will do when in...
This is why audio podcasts of this would be horrible. Because I'm not exactly sure where this comment from Michael Moore is. I know it's around here somewhere. But for people listening, I feel bad for you.
Power and what they fundamentally believe and how they act when the cameras are off. I mean, I think that's a valuable thing and it's important to do. Thank goodness you don't care about being, speaking your mind and saying difficult things. And so I think that's an admirable trait and you should be honest about how you're feeling.
I really appreciate you saying that because you're right. I've been given a certain, whether it's luck or a privilege or whatever, I think that's the title of this, on a variety of levels. And in this particular case, with Biden, with Warren, Bernie, I've not met Buttigieg, but his husband grew up just down the street from where I now live in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
In Traverse City, Michigan. What you were saying and thinking, now is not the time to hold back. And the chips have to fall where they have to fall because we're out of time. And when I hear you ask me that question, when I hear you politely implore that I be completely honest with what I know, that really all you do know are the boxes that show what they voted for in the House or the Senate, or what they, what you've read in the paper, what you see on TV. So I'm just going to, without any thought, having been put into this, just tell you what I think.
Wonderful, putting you on the spot here.
And no, I'm glad to be put on the spot because, here's what I felt while you were saying this. I'm looking at you, and
so he, I'll get to it, but he equivocates a lot. He clearly is he's struggling with the idea of talking about how he actually feels about Elizabeth Warren, and it's I don't know how to explain it. It's endearing in a way. Because Michael Moore, he doesn't want to create any enemies, right? But at the same time, if you're going to fight for somebody, you have to actually fight for them and be honest about what you know and what you think about other candidates, which he gets to eventually. I think it's getting to the point now where he's finally opening up.
You are of a generation that is younger than me.
That is correct, yes. And you're not going out on a limb on this one.
Okay, good. And it's maybe safe to say, though I don't believe this either, because I think the calamity and the collapse is upon us. So a lot of boomers think that, well, we'll make it to the end of our lives, but we won't suffer the indignity of what planet Earth is going to do to the species.
Sure.
But you will, Alex, and people, the high school students who are next now going, they're the generation that's coming up behind you. They may not even live to see that moment of the calamity and the collapse.
Right. Right. I think we probably agree that, the reality is that certainly elderly people in the United States are suffering immensely already from whether it's economic crisis in this country, whether it's climate change around the world. So yes, totally agree.
The pension that has been taken, witnessed, privately witnessed. I look at that. I look at that here. There is no time to waste is what I'm saying. There's no time to put it off. It's coming up. This is it. Truth of this. I truly believe we will not have a moment, again, in my lifetime, to vote for a Bernie Sanders, who is going to fight for these very things that are going to try to give people of your generation a future. I was on Chris Hazer the other night, and I just blurted out, and I said, look who's doing that. Bernie's the one trying to. That's why the young people want him, because he spent all his time on their future. He has no future. Whatever he's fighting for, he will be moving when you just think of it that way. And there is no time. And Biden. Let's start with Biden.
Sure.
Biden.
Okay, it's coming up now.
He will say he is.
I feel bad for people listening, but it's. I know it's coming up because I remember now the conversation is coming back to me. He starts with Biden, and then he goes to Elizabeth Warren. Just got to search it to see. In case you're wondering how Twitch works, this is basically what Twitch is. It's watching or listening to other stuff and slowly going through all of it. But it's somewhere in here. I'll find it shortly.
For the working class. The only way that we can survive is if people who choose to be leaders lead and fight for the things. And he and the former DLC portion of the Democratic Party, and I'm angry about it.
Sure.
And I'm sorry that so much time was lost. People were stunned in Fahrenheit 11/9, my last movie, that I would show Obama drinking the water in Flint.
It was an amazing scene, scene.
To tell people it's okay to drink the water. And the people in the gymnasium, mostly African-American, feeling like a knife was being put through their heart. They couldn't believe what they were watching. And then, of course, everybody found out later that they brought the water from Air Force One.
Right.
And he wasn't there. No Secret Service is going to allow him to drink poisoned water.
Sure.
Come on. And it was just so stunning. This is a black city. That this man, our first black president, would do this. Would tell fellow African-Americans, it's okay, folks, drink the water. I got fed up a long time ago. And I've tried to do my best with my films. I've tried to present them with a certain, sometimes, sense of humor to make the medicine go down a little easier. But in the end, Bernie's right, she said. I'm for what Bernie's for. Wow, good for you. Good for you. Bernie's right. But in the end, that doesn't cut it. And Elizabeth Warren.
All right. I'm going to put on normal speed now because I think this is where the actual discussion happens.
A certain, sometimes, sense of humor to make the medicine go down a little easier. But in the end, that doesn't cut it. And Elizabeth Warren, the fact that she can't even explain what Medicare for All is. I loved her when she right away supported Bernie. She defended Bernie at that first debate. Bernie's right, she said. I'm for what Bernie's for. wow, good for you. And then when they asked her what it was and how it would be paid for,
right,
she couldn't answer it. And then had 4 different answers over the next 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you have hurt the cause more than any Republican.
Wow.
By what you've just done.
Muddying the definition so that all of a sudden it starts slipping to me.
Correct.
Yeah.
With an American public that has, through all the polls, shown that they want some form of universal health care where they never have to worry about, losing their livelihood as a result of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that you couldn't do that was absolutely stunning. That you would admit that you voted for Republicans till 1996, that Ronald Reagan was okay with you, that George Bush the First was okay with you.
Right.
Are you serious?
Sure. And I mean, my view on this stuff is it's one thing. I mean, you and I both, I think, agree about this, that people can change, and that certainly whenever I meet someone who is not already to the left, my goal is to sort of explain that they deserve more than they're getting and to change their views, whether they're a liberal or a conservative. I want them to become someone who's fighting for their class interests,
Yes.
and I want them to become a socialist, ideally. It's very different as far as how we evaluate people if they are public figures and they're representing people. And so I think for Warren to sort of be trying to claim a mantle of the left and to want the incredible responsibility of the presidency of the country that, determines not just our population's lives, but lives around the world, I think you get to evaluate people based on their entire history. And it is hard to believe someone was voting for Reagan, who's very well educated, was very aware of what she was doing by being a conservative. So it's, to me, certainly it's fair game to ask those questions. Now, I mean, in recent interviews, she's getting asked about this more, which I think is very fair. But I mean, the anger of what those policies meant, whether it was in the United States, what Reagan was passing, or it's, U.S. intervention elsewhere. I mean, you're right to be angry about it.
And in her case, very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point she had an epiphany and she figured out that the income inequality in this country wasn't good for the country.
Mm-hmm.
And that she was going to do work at Harvard to sort of study this and show people why we had to fix things. But when she became part of the Obama administration, and when that administration essentially took over General Motors, they only took it over, like we said, to really just give it back, not to fix what the core problem is, which is the profit motive.
Right.
And I was just thinking, geez, if I were president and I became the de facto CEO of General Motors, this is what I would say I'm going to do. We're going to keep these factories.
All right, I'm not going to play all this, but this kind of opened me up a little more to recognizing that there are a lot of people that are maybe more public figures that may even be engaged in politics, but they hold back their true feelings because they're afraid of whatever blowback they may receive. And I know it seems obvious that of course people do that, but Michael Moore, even somebody who's like a straight shooter, he's an honest guy. Michael Moore is honest in terms of how he feels about issues. He clearly has been holding himself back in terms of what he feels about Elizabeth Warren and the fact that she voted Republican well into the 90s. Reagan, George Bush Sr. I mean, this idea that Elizabeth Warren is any kind of progressive champion or left-wing champion. And look, I know, of course, people grow and change, and they should be allowed to grow and change. Like, my issue isn't even really, like, I think it appears to me Michael Moore has more of an issue with Elizabeth Warren's history as a Republican than I do, because I do think people should be allowed to grow and change and show, prove themselves. But it's more than that. I mean, you have here, like in general, how Michael Moore has been treating Warren and Sanders is he's backed Sanders, that's clear, But he's been acting like, well, if we get Elizabeth Warren, it wouldn't be that bad either. But here you kind of get a different perspective, a different view from Michael Moore, that actually he's a little worried that Elizabeth Warren wouldn't deliver what she is promising to deliver. And the healthcare example is perfect. I mean, she supported Medicare for all. I felt the same way when Elizabeth Warren was on the stage in a debate over the summer and said, I'm with Bernie on Medicare for all. For me, it was kind of like a sigh of relief. Like, oh, good. At least there's like someone else in this race that, you know, I'm still backing Bernie, but at least there's someone else in this race that understands this is a serious fight and you need to get behind bold policy in order to win. And then what does she do? She backs off and has this weird two-tier idea of like having a public option first in the first year and then somehow thinking she's going to be able to fight for Medicare for all in her third year. Two separate healthcare fights when one fight's going to be hard enough, and giving private insurance companies a 3-year head start to fight her on Medicare for all, with them knowing when the next fight's coming up. It's complete. Like, it's, if she's honest about it, then it's stupid. Otherwise, she's being dishonest. So Elizabeth Warren's either being dishonest about how effective her plan's going to be, or she is pretty dumb in thinking that it's going to work. Pick one. So Michael Moore has the right perspective here, and just understand, you know, people that you may have issues with, whether they're in the media, whoever it is, celebrities, you have issues with their politics. Understand, there's a good chance they're holding back. That, you know, if you've seen glimmers of hope from these people, whether it's Michael Moore or somebody else, that, oh, this person says good things sometimes, but then why do they say this dumb thing? They're likely holding back for whatever reason. So basically, don't pass judgment, keep an open mind, and understand that, you know, if Bernie begins to pick up steam and really it's going to be, if it ends up being his nomination, I think a lot of these people are going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to back Bernie Sanders wholeheartedly in ways that maybe you didn't see them do in the past. All right. Also, I should end on saying, subscribe to this podcast. It's fantastic. Listen to the entire episode with Alex Press. It's really, really good. You see, he's a MM Flint on YouTube, but he's on, obviously, you know, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all that stuff. So check out the podcast. It's fantastic. Don't listen to the Robert De Niro one. It's not a good episode. But the other ones I listened to, this one, Anand Giridharadas, and I began listening to, I'm forgetting his name now. It's probably here somewhere. The director of Joker, Phillips in his name. Why am I forgetting his friggin' name? Todd Phillips. That's it. Also a good episode. I haven't finished it. I got halfway through it, but great episodes. Subscribe to him. He's doing some good work. All right. As I was saying 10 minutes ago, time to end on some super chats. And then this has been a 3-hour stream, I believe. It's a long stream. All right. All right. Finishing with these. Shelby Hall says, Happy New Year, David. I do 30 minutes of weights, 30 minutes of elliptical, 5 days a week, and got a stand-up desk for work. My back has been better. Stand-up desk would be a good idea, but I don't know. That'd be a big shift. But thank you, Shelby. I definitely need to do something for sure. Hot Mustard Gas says, what's the best way to convince my family who are on the fence about Bernie? Where do I start? Share that video that Matt Orfalea, I think his name is, put together. Look up his name on Twitter, Orfalea, or something like that. Faleo, I forget. But he had that amazing ad. Remember that amazing Bernie ad? It was like a fan-made Bernie ad. Because it really shows you like the difference between what the media says about Bernie and who Bernie actually is. I think that's a great one to show. But even the clips that Bernie Sanders himself shares, they're awesome. Like, he has one about Bernie's history of accomplishments, his record of accomplishment in the House and the Senate and as a mayor. That's a great clip. Share that. Share these clips of Michael Moore discussing why Bernie Sanders is electable. And, you know, I don't know where to begin, but basically I think video is kind of the best way to go. So find clips, whether it's mine or other people, talking about Bernie and making the argument. I think that's the best way to go. Monica G says, Sacred Blue Mask, David, who are you voting for in March? for Liberal Premier in Ontario. Any suggestions? I'm not voting for the Liberal Premier. Like for the leadership contest, which I assume is happening, because we have a progressive conservative as our premier right now in Doug Ford, and he has 3 more years left. But I'm not voting in the leadership race. I'm not a liberal, so I'm not voting in that. But thank you for asking. All right. I think that's it. Refreshing just to make sure, because I always end up missing somebody's question. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for coming. I'm here next week on Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. I just heard a new super chat. I want to make sure that's a new one because it might be an old one. I get like audio notifications. There is a new one. Okay, this last question. Holden Vetito says, I will need your help when I run for office in Ohio. I am not sure which way I'm going. I'm going as fast as the office. But I will need people like you and Bernie. I think there's some typos in there. But there are a million people running for Congress. It's hard to keep track. There are people I haven't interviewed that I feel like I should have interviewed by now, or I should interview. Shahid Buttar is somebody. So I don't do many interviews, but I'll talk about if I believe in the candidate and they have some support behind them, and there isn't like another progressive that has more support. Like, it's important to be able to pick a candidate and really go with that candidate. You don't want multiple progressives in the same primary race. So I take a wait and see approach. I have so much to do that I can't pick winners and losers early on. But when candidates begin to emerge, like Shahid Buttar has against Nancy Pelosi, then I think it's important at that point to jump on board. Did I hear another super chat? People going late with this. All right, last one. Hot Mustard says, I just heard that 39 Republican senators signed an amicus brief asking SCOTUS to consider overturning Roe v. Wade. All right, I don't know anything about that. I got to look into this stuff. All right, thank you for coming, for watching, and see you next week. Goodbye.